Well met. This has been Brode, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Welcome to Born to be Cosmo, a twice monthly podcast where we talk all things Snap, and try to match our sister podcast, Born to be Wild's professionalism and polish. Although with those intros, I think maybe we have a bit of a ways to go. I am joined by my talented and handsome co-hosts, Nate Wolfe and ZombiesGoNomNom. Always great to have you guys here. There is a ton to talk about since we last met almost about a month ago. So I just propose we dive right into the news.
Yeah, all right.
Welcome to the news. The news is so good.
Sorry.
All right, you and I are gonna have to have a talk. For those that are unaware, Nate runs another podcast called Born to be Wild Hearthstone, of which I am a longtime spectator of. And that news bumper that Hydralisk, one of the co-hosts of that show, created, exists solely to get under my skin. So I guess now it's a thing here too. I said we were going to jump right in, and now I'm ranting about the news bumper. So why don't you take us off, Nate?
All right, we got a lot of news. We can go through it rather quickly, some of it anyhow. So we are just in time for a new season. So on March 6th, we started a brand new season of Snap with Days of Future Past. This is a major X-Men storyline for you comic book nerds here. So this is exciting to see. But new battle pass, new cards, new cosmetics. There's a new cosmetic event that's coming, new bundles, new ranked ladder system. Same meta, right?
Oh dear, yeah, there'll be much to say about that.
With the battle pass here, so everyone, the free track or the $10 track, which gets you, the cards and stuff, or the $15 track, which advances you the first 10 levels. I found to be really good if you're collecting the cosmetics and stuff like that. So the
are you still getting that, Nate? The enhanced battle pass?
Yeah, because it's like it's $5 extra, but I'm finding myself usually hitting around like 100 or something on the track. Damn. And so having the extra cosmetics and stuff is kind of cool, especially because I don't typically buy them in the shop unless it's one that I like really, really want. And I've opened some really cool ones that way. I think that it's a good price point. If it was any more, I probably wouldn't. But yeah, it buys you basically like probably a week. So it's pretty nice to get advanced.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, if you get like half decent luck, even if you don't roll a variant, if you just get some credits and gold, I think it is often better value than just like what you get with $5 of gold. So
yeah. I find it's been pretty helpful, and the price point seems worth to me. So anyhow, the paid pass includes the Nimrod card, the new card, two new card backs, so a Sentinel card back and an X-Men card back, Sentinel and Wolverine variants, and then a variant for the Nimrod card. It's the Dan Hip version. I wish that they would have done this when we had Zabu. Yeah, I was thinking Zabu, because I loved that one. But anyways,
I don't think that one's out yet either. I don't think that one's released.
Oh, okay. See, we the problem with the data mining is we see it all so early, but
yeah.
But Dan Hip Nimrod, and then some avatars. Standard season, 4 weeks worth of length. And then, of course, the new card here is Nimrod. I've got the Dan Hip version up on the screen. And so this is a 5 energy, 5 power that reads, when this is destroyed, add a copy to each other location. So it's an interesting card. The synergies, you could see it with Galactus, you could see it with Destroyer, or some kind of ramp. I've seen people do things kind of like you would do with Black Panther, if you want to, like, you buff it, and then you do the Arnim Zola thing where you're breaking it and rebuilding it, and it's like propagating. So it's interesting. I think kind of as an interesting discussion point, depending on where you hit with the ladder, like we had 2 months back to back, right, where we had Zabu and then Silver Surfer, which were like super high meta impact cards. And now we're starting to kind of get away from that. I know we were talking early in the month and like nobody had seen Nimrod except me, right? And I finished last month at rank 75, and then the reset happened and I started playing with this card right away, and I actually saw kind of a lot of it, but I think it's just based on my MMR range or ELO range or whatever it is. And you guys were saying like, oh, nobody's playing it. It's really interesting, and I think that it's not super competitive, but it's fun. I've seen it tried out in Shuri decks, which of course I've got Shuri pinned right now, but I don't have. I've been waiting for a long time. But I think if you're gonna play Nimrod, you have to buff it first, and like the poor man's Shuri is like Forge, which is just bad, right? It only buffs it a tiny bit, and it's just not worth. I've seen some destroy kind of decks with like Carnage and Venom and stuff do like okay, but it's just funky. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see, have you guys tried this card? Have you played around with it? What are your thoughts on it? It's definitely not busted, I don't think, but
No. It's so like I really like the design of Nimrod as a card. I think it's really sweet. Cool effect, fun little build around. I think it kind of hits the sweet spot for what you want most of your season pass cards to be. Kind of like MODOK in a way where it's like it's not warping the game around it like Surfer and Zabu kind of did, but it still provides like an interesting thing for people to experiment with. But I sent a meme I posted if you want to pull it up, Nate. So like we were talking about this before the show. And you're like, oh, I've seen a decent bit of Nimrod. I've been playing it. It's been going kind of all right. And so I tried to play it on release or whatever, and I made it about an hour. I think I made it about an hour trying Nimrod stuff.
You don't say, a full hour.
Yeah, a whole hour.
Longer than
before
most.
I had to stop. And that the meme here is why. We have two roads here for the Marvel Snap season this month. Playing Nimrod and winning games. Choose wisely. So
You have
that's
those labels flipped.
yeah. So the funny thing here is just like, can you win with Nimrod? Yes. It's not like Nimrod's like the worst card in the world or anything. The issue, and we're gonna go into it more when we talk about the meta game and whatnot, is he just really can't reasonably compete very well with the two most popular decks. Shuri alone really shuts down Nimrod between Cosmo and Armor. It just makes it very challenging for you to do your Nimrod stuff. And then Thanos just has so much power that like it's hard to keep up with them. Even when you draw like your perfect Nimrod combo, it can be just difficult to outpower them. So it's not, and also leech. Like you can just get your thing leeched if they cheat out leech. So I've seen some builds people have been having success with. It's not impossible, but it's you're in for an uphill battle, which is it's not exclusive to Nimrod. I don't think this is saying like, oh, Nimrod is bad. It's really not. I think it's a pretty reasonable and interesting card. It's just like the bar is so high to compete with the Thanos deck and the Shuri deck right now. It's just hard for like the vast majority of decks. And I think Nimrod's kind of caught up there.
So I have a confession, guys. Are you ready?
Mhm.
Yeah. I have not played a single game with Nimrod. Not one.
Well,
In
okay.
fact, I've only played one deck this season so far.
I think that
I'm a bad person.
if you're gonna build it, it basically the only version of it to me that seems anywhere near viable is like you take the Shuri deck and you just throw it in there, right? And that's the list that I see winning, right? And that's the one that we're talking about in chat here as well.
That's
So
what I've seen too. Is you have the Shuri backbone, and then you have Nimrod as kind of an alternate win con, which, given the meta, I think that's probably the smartest way to go with the card right now.
So you think that's better than the Destroyer route? That's more of a meme because
I believe it has the Destroyer in this one. Or at
does
least
it?
the one I saw. So it's like the Shuri package, but I believe you add in Electro, Destroyer, and Nimrod in place of I think like the 1-drops maybe. I haven't played it very much. I only saw other people talking about it. But if I recall correctly, it's just small little Nimrod package in the Shuri shell, which honestly makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, with the upcoming balance changes, people will be more open to exploring with it, perhaps without the looming threat of being leached and just being shut down. So it's an interesting card. I certainly have not avoided playing it because it's something that I dislike. I think it's a fun effect. Just, like you said, depending on where you are in ladder, it's a 2-deck meta, and I feel compelled to climb. Although maybe that's the wrong attitude to take. It's the one that I've taken so far this season. So yeah, maybe towards the end of the month I'll get to finally take the dust off Nimrod. Maybe by then I'll have a good dab and hip variant, and we'll get to rock it out.
Hey, there
And
we
it is
go.
worth mentioning, like you just said there, like this can depend greatly, like where you're at on the ladder. Like I was watching a friend of the show here, Binks, the other night, and I think he was in the 40s or the 50s, and he was having a lot more success with Nimrod because it wasn't quite as like overpopulated with Shuri and Thanos, like has been my experience. So this isn't necessarily the case for all parts of ladder, but like in just my experience going from 70 to infinite this season, I can probably count on one hand the amount of Nimrod I've ran into. And
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
I mean, I think we'll get there later. Let's jam through a little bit more of the news, and I think we've got a pretty pumped discussion on the ladder. That'll be pretty interesting. We do have a couple of new cards here, though, if we wanted to take a look at those.
And
Yeah.
it's a little more optimistic because I think that this month's cards are a little bit more exciting than last month's.
Agreed. So new cards dropping this month. I'm pretty pumped about this. I think January was kind of a bit of a lackluster month for new cards. February had some neat ones. I think the one most people were excited for was Kang, because he was the new big bad and had a very interesting effect. But I think this month in March is really the most exciting release of cards we've had so far in the new year. So first up, we are having MODOK. MODOK's making his way to Series 5. I believe that's already happened with the release of the new season, or last week, I think that happened. So now, if you didn't get MODOK in the Battle Pass, you can get him through Series 5. Though I'd probably recommend waiting for him to drop down. I think there are other Series 5s to go for first, but if you want him, he's there. Then this coming week, we have Master Mold dropping. Master Mold is a 2-cost, 2-power. On reveal, add 2 Sentinels to your opponent's hand. I like the design of this card a lot. Fun fact, the earlier version of it before release was actually a 3-cost, 3-power that added 3 Sentinels.
Wow.
But I think this change is actually better because it being a 2-mana card, I think is going to make it quite a bit more competitive. And I don't think you're really missing the extra stat or extra Sentinel a whole lot. This one definitely seems like it could be a boost for Darkhawk style decks. Another way to fill up their hand so they don't draw a card. And that way you can capitalize on the Darkhawk or what's his name? The inverse dino. Ronan, thank you.
Ronan stonks.
Yeah, Ronan stonks going up, make their hand big, and then play the big dude.
Oh, let me ask you your noob question here, but what is the hand size limit for those people who don't know? Okay.
7 cards. So I actually think it's really neat if your opponent's not playing anything out quickly, you can just slam the Master Mold, and then if they aren't playing stuff, like their hand's kind of full, and if they play the Sentinel, it's keeping their hand full. So if like your opponent's playing like a greedier deck, or this could even be good against Thanos, right? Because Thanos, almost all the stones cycle. So if you're filling up their hand and they keep cycling, they're going to like be missing their draw on the start of their turn because they're going to keep their hand at 7. So that can benefit the Darkhawk stuff. Or another idea, you could even, let's say, bounce the Master Mold, like Thinjay's mentioning here in chat, and then play it again and give your opponent more Sentinels, and it can be pretty fun. So I think it's a really sweet card, and I was really excited for this one. But then I saw the other cards that are coming out this month, and I really like those ones too. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to actually get Master Mold on a release or not, because I think all 3 cards coming this month are really appealing. The next one of those is, and these are in release order, so Master Mold is coming this coming week. The following week is Negasonic Teenage Warhead. That is a 3-cost, 4-power. After any card is played here, destroy this card and that card. So this is really neat. This actually is another one that got a bit buffed. It used to be a 3-2, now it's a 3-4.
Yeah, we have the old picture on the screen, so it's indeed a 3-4, not a
Oh.
3-2.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting now. Most people are going to be like, "Oh, well, why does the power matter? You know, the cards are going to blow up." There are two reasons why that matters. One, null potential. It feeds your null a bit better. And the other thing is, you can use this card as a deterrent. So sometimes it might not even need to blow up. Just the threat of it being there. Let's say you're ahead in a lane and you slam this card down. If your opponent is not playing like a deck with a bunch of cheap stuff where they can just throw something away into that lane, they can't slam their Devil Dino down, their Magnet, whatever their big thing is. They can't just slam it to win that lane because it's going to blow up. So they have to kind of sacrifice something to get that lane. And the extra power there gives us a greater chance of actually keeping that lane one if they aren't playing anything there. Helps with priority situations. So I actually really like that they changed that. I think this card is going to be very helpful against Shuri in particular, because now it kind of gives us a way to slam this in their Cosmo lane. Whereas before we couldn't really blow up their big Red Skull, big She-Hulk, whatever in the Cosmo lane. Now if we can get it down, and a really neat thing about it, if you have priority, you can slam this, and if you predict where they're playing their card, if they slam it there, you reveal, they reveal, their thing blows up. So I think that's really cool. I'm pretty excited for this card. I think there's a lot of different applications for it. The only downside, right, is that since it's launching in Series 5, it's hard for, anyone to rely on this as like a consistent counter to the Shuri deck because accessibility stuff.
It's like, sweet, I'll see it in like 3 months when it drops down to pool 3 or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
3 months until it drops to pool 4, then probably another couple before it drops to pool 3.
Yeah.
So the 5 total has been the...
Yeah, it's rough.
Never mind. Carry on.
That's fine. But the last card we have here is Kitty Pryde. So Kitty Pryde is a 1-cost 0 power with the text, "You can return this to your hand to gain +2 power." Now, there were a lot of questions about this card because people were wondering, myself included, how does this work exactly? Like, can you play Kitty and bounce Kitty, or can you bounce Kitty and play Kitty in the same turn? And we did get some clarification on this from the developers, which was very nice. It's always nice to kind of know this stuff before the card releases so people can make a pretty informed decision because those tokens are not growing on trees. But basically, how this works is you play Kitty the first turn. I don't think you can't bounce her the turn you play her for the first time. But once she's on the field, you can bounce her to your hand and then play her in the same turn. So if I play her on turn 2, I can pull her back and then play her again on turn 2.
Wow.
And then she'll get that +2. Also, a lot of questions about, hey, what if I bounce Kitty with Beast or Falcon? She will not get the extra +2. You only get that bonus when you are bouncing her with her own effect. So that's important to know. But much like Deadpool, there's a cool interaction here where if you bounce Kitty with Beast, she will remain at 0 cost for the rest of the game, which it's been very powerful with Deadpool, and I expect it to be rather powerful with this card. Definitely looks like a pretty big boost to the kind of Bounce Bros deck that has been seeing a bit of play recently, as well as Zoo. I think this is a really, really good Zoo card because Zoo vomits their hand out. Sometimes they have mana to float. So the fact that we can just kind of always have something to grow, this helps you dodge Killmonger a bit too. It just seems like a really sweet card. And I think I ran a poll earlier on in the month, and if I recall correctly, I think Kitty and Negasonic were almost tied for the most wanted card after the winning result, which is I'm probably saving my tokens.
So you could there's some utility here, right? Like I can pull it back. So if there's a lane and they like, say I want to play it in my like Sarah Cope deck or whatever, like if I've got my lane full and they play this big chonker, right? They play a Magneto or whatever. Like I could bounce her and drop my Shang-Chi. Like that's kind of sneaky. I like that.
It's pretty cool. I think it's a really neat design, and I was very happy to see that you can bounce it and replay it on the same turn because the card looked a lot worse if you couldn't do that. So it was very nice to get some clarification on that.
I mean, a pretty obvious interaction is you bounce it, you play it, or even better, you play it into Angela, you beast, pull it back, and then play it again into Angela, so you can really pump Angela to heights. This is really good also with Bishop. And also won't work with the Collector because it started in your deck. But between Bishop and Angela, you've got like those zoo options. The Beast really pairs well with it. This is the card that I'm getting. I'm getting this when it drops. I basically have Kang pinned right now, but I'm gonna skip out on Kang. I'm gonna skip out on Master Mold. Probably gonna skip out on Negasonic. I feel like Negasonic is really strong, but a bit of a tech against decks that go tall. But right now that would be premium. So just saying. But yeah, Kitty Pryde's the card that I'm most excited for.
So the way to get these, right, is unless they offer some bundle, which we don't think is happening, right? Or maybe. Anyways, you just have to leave your shop open, and when it rotates in, you have to pin it and then use your tokens on it.
Yeah, essentially. There is also a way you can kind of manipulate this a little bit, where you can. It's a little complicated, but there's a file you can check for the game, and it basically keeps track of where you are in your shop rotation. Now, this really only works efficiently if you've finished all of Pool 3, so you're only getting Pool 4 and Pool 5 cards. But if you there's a guide somewhere on Snap Zone, and people in the different discords were talking about where you can see where your rotation is. So for people like me who are doing content around these cards to kind of try and make sure you get the card when it comes out, you can track that, and that way kind of guarantee it to show up in your shop. Most people probably aren't going to do that, and that's fine. The developers have actually mentioned, I believe, in a patch coming in April, whenever a new card drops, it's just going to automatically show up in your shop that day, so you don't have to do this silly reading the matrix to figure out when it's going to show up. So that's a good change coming in the future, but not quite yet. But that is, it's going to be helpful because I myself and many other content creators have, it's been very frustrating. Like one of the things that came up with Kang is a lot of people did this trick, so they're they saw everything in their shop but Kang, and then when it was time for Kang to release, they were expecting Kang to show up, and we all checked our shop reset on the reset time, but it dropped like 30 minutes late or so. And so people who had gone through their whole rotation just reset, and now they're up to the will of RNG to get that card that they want to showcase, and that's, if you don't know, really really bad for content creation, because due to the way in this game cards are acquired and how they're hard for people to get, most of the time new cards really they only excel in content for like a day or two because people want to see if the hot new toy is worth it or not. And then oftentimes people don't like watching the new card because it's frustrating to watch a card you can't play with for a long time.
I'm gonna set up I'm gonna set up a soundboard, and anytime someone says RNG, I'm gonna cue the Ben Brode laugh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very fitting. But yeah, it's hopefully they have actually said in the next 2 patches, I think we're going to be getting some improvements or changes to the token system and the token shop. So I'm remaining hopeful that, they've talked about it a few times, like they need to be more active in making the majority of the player base actually get more excited about these new releases. And the way to do that is to make them acquirable without breaking the bank.
It's sad because I see these and like I didn't even look them up because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to play with them. And isn't that like the opposite of what you want with new stuff, right?
It's total opposite.
And especially for like the super engaged people to not even be looking at your brand new stuff because they know they can't get it. Like it just seems so backwards to me. Anyways,
it's bad for everybody, right?
Yeah,
like, it's very frustrating as like I'm someone who likes to play with the new card I bought, but I get like punished for that as a creator outside of the first 2 days and it reminds me of we talked about this a long time ago back in beta, Nate. Like we were really excited looking at all the like when beta just dropped and we like submitted our thing for invites. I was watching a bunch of Snap, and then I had to stop watching it. And the reason I had to stop watching it was because the game looked really good and fun, and it made me want to play it, and I couldn't play it. And that was a frustrating experience. So I stopped watching it until I got in because I didn't want to watch this thing that I couldn't use. And it's kind of the same thing.
If I can't have it, yeah.
the cards, right?
Anyways, all right. Well, hey, let's talk about some cosmetics, right? There's an event coming up.
There is, yes. So we have a variant rush coming up. For those who were not around in December, there was a Winterverse event that was actually coupled with daily login rewards. I don't think we're getting those this time around, but you never know. But basically, what is a variant rush? Essentially, there are 5 new variants, and they're going to be available for a limited time. How you get these is you just open the collector's reserves, and there's always a chance you get a cosmetic, and in that cosmetic slot, there will be a chance for you to get one of these 5. Now, they only basically show up during this event. It's possible they could come back in the future, but these aren't things you're going to see in your shop. They're not going to be something you can just randomly acquire outside of this window. So if you're interested in these ones, that is the time to try and get them. I'm saving my reserves for them right now. You could also save credits. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, this is starting on the 20th of March, going to the 3rd of April. The cards it's actually steampunk themed. And the developers actually said that this was supposed to come out last season, because if you remember last season, we had the Steampunk Wasp, the Steampunk Ant-Man.
Oh,
So this was actually supposed to be last season, but I guess there was some issues there with getting it out then, but they still wanted to do it, so they're doing it instead this season.
The Shocker and the Yellow Jacket are amazing, and the Cerebro is super cursed.
Yeah, it really. Yeah, I super agree. Like Shocker, Yellow Jacket, and I also really like that Bishop.
The Bishop is super cool.
Sweet.
Yeah,
I just bought the Bishop bundle, and I'm not going to use it over that new one.
I can't see the Falcon is too small for me. I just can't see it well enough.
It looks pretty neat. And Falcon, maybe we'll see some more of him with Kitty Pryde and the bounce deck if that gets more popular. But yeah, it's going to be going for about two-ish weeks or so, 14-day event. And they actually doubled the rates from last time, so you have twice as high chances of getting it from a reserve than you did during the last time. Drop rate is a 40% chance in the cosmetic roll. For the chance of for an average of 10% chance per cash. So 10% chance every cash you get one of these.
Did you get them all last time?
Yeah, I did. So it's funny. I wouldn't have gotten them all last time, but they actually had. That was actually when they had that issue where they had to delay their patch by a week. So it actually lasted a week longer than they intended it to, and because of that, I ended up getting all of them last time, whereas I wouldn't if it ended before. But now with the higher drop rate, I think there's a better chance of being able to get them all in the 2-week window. Oh, and they're also titles and avatars too. I think it's like 3 titles, and I'm assuming an avatar for each one of these. That Cerebro avatar will be very amusing if that's the case.
Yeah, so if you want them, save your boxes, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen you doing that is like, as you progress on the, your collection timeline there, open everything, but not the boxes, save your collector's cash boxes.
Yeah. So currently how the system works, what's in your box isn't fully rolled until you open it. Basically, your box knows what type of box it is. This is the same for like getting Series 4 cards. So I'm someone who's Series 4 complete. So that's another reason where I'm not incentivized to open my boxes right now, because when presumably the next rotation of cards moving down is going to happen with this same patch, because these events typically require a patch. And it's about the same time as last month. Last month, we got the rotation on the 21st of February. So I'm waiting for that because Shadow King, Dazzler, Sauron, all these cards that launched back in January are moving into Pool 4. So I'd rather get that than just some credits. Or not credits, tokens.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll stoke to pull Dazzler.
Yeah. Only if they add the Art Germ Dazzler variant.
Oh, fair enough.
Oh, the cosmetics are good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then we have this fancy chart here, Blue. I actually enlarge it so it would take up the whole screen because otherwise no one would be able to read it. But this is a pretty neat tool
this
we
is
have here.
A service that SnapZone does for us, because if you've all noticed, the amount of bundles that they are releasing have increased. And I actually think this is a good thing. So like earlier in the year, or late last year, they had these like infrequent bundle releases that had a lot of stuff and were very expensive, and they still kind of do that, but they also have smaller ones as well, and some of them are available for gold, some of them are available for real money, and a lot of newer players who have some credits and some gold are completely overwhelmed. They don't know what to do, and so this chart helps navigate that. So there are 15 bundles that are being released in the month of March. That is a lot.
Holy cow!
Yeah. And these include the popular quote Token Tuesday. So they started releasing small bundles for gold that include collector's tokens as a way of kind of democratizing the token shop, so that you could get those pool 3 cards a little bit faster, or maybe get the tokens you need to get that Kang the Conqueror you've pinned. And so every week they're offering on Tuesday for one day the Token Tuesday bundle. And so I've noticed a pattern with the bundles, right? And this is supported by the chart. When you think of the bundle in terms of absolute value and relative value, the smaller bundles have relatively more value per dollar than the larger ones. They tend to be better deals. Like, the best example that I could offer is the Jubilee bundle we had last month, right? It was I don't remember how much it was in US dollars, and Canadian dollars.
$5, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like less than $10 in Canada, and it had a lot of stuff in it, and pound for pound, the total value per dollar in that bundle is really good. But it's small, so you on an absolute scale, you're not getting as much. Whereas if you buy something like the Bishop bundle in the store right now, you're going to get a lot more collector's tokens, a lot more credits. So total absolute value is higher, but relative to what you get in the smaller ones, it's actually a worse deal. And so for me, it's really hard. Everyone has different budgets, desires, etc., to get out of the game. And so using this chart could help inform you if it's a good deal or not. But sometimes if you really want credits or you really want tokens, you'll want to go for those things. My advice is this, like as a general rule, if you're a free to play or you're like Nate and you're a battle pass only player, save your gold for the smaller bundles like the Token Tuesday or the special offers. They tend to be relatively better than the larger ones like, say, Rivalry Week or Mutant Masterpiece. But if you're not sure, and we'll link this as well, you can pull up this chart from Snapzone. They've been keeping it up to date with the new items that come out. I'm going to link it right now. I would definitely consult it. If anything, just to maybe take a little bit of the mystery away from what you're getting.
I will say, I was just going to say, as a free-to-play relatively player, like, I get the battle pass, but I could not have got that Thanos without the Token Tuesday, and so I just been saving up gold. Like, I didn't spend money on it, but I had the gold, and then that was a great value. So I'm happy that they're doing small changes at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention here too with the bundles, I just sent it over to you, Nate. We have an April Fool's Day bundle, and
oh my God.
it has something really great, and it's Ben Brode's favorite thing. It's a rock. Who doesn't love rocks? So what's the number here? It's 400 gold, so essentially $6, and you're not getting any tokens for it. I don't even think you're getting credits. It's purely a cosmetic thing, but you are going to get a title. I got a rock. And then you also get this lovely rock cosmetic.
Are we certain it's a cosmetic? It's still not clear if it's a cosmetic or an actual card.
So I wasn't sure at first, but then I thought about it, and there's no way it's going to be a collectible card. Because imagine if who knows what happens in the future? What if the rock becomes like a desirable card, like in a certain style of deck, and the only way to get this was to buy that one bundle on April 1st?
They'll put it in pool 5 so everyone can get it.
Yeah.
You imagine pulling this as your pool 5 card?
Oh
I guess
God.
it'd still be better than Sentinel, but
Yeah.
Not by much.
Century, but yeah. Yeah. So I love this. I think it's really funny, and I'm looking forward to. I'm assuming how this works is, this is going to be our first token cosmetic, because they've talked about wanting to do that. A very requested feature has been, hey, I have, let's say, Pixel Doom, for example. Why aren't my Doom bots also pixels?
Right.
And they've said, that's something we'd like to do in the future, but it's like not a high priority. There are a lot of other things they want to work on to improve the game first, which is understandable. But looks like this might be our first cosmetic that customizes, when rocks show up in game, whether it's a card like Korg or one of the locations, you get a funny little friend here instead of the normal artwork.
Wow. Somewhere Ben Brode is
Great.
Everybody loves rocks. Everybody loves pixel variants, and yet I suspect this will probably sell well. It's so
Yeah.
cursed that it's good. This is like, pixel hell cow, right? It's
Yeah.
You just can't look away. It's just too perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah, so lots of bundles, but I am, just as a general comment, I think that I'm happy to see bundles that are a little bit more accessible and also that accelerate the acquisition of cards. I
Mhm.
do hope that without kind of opening the Pandora's box, which is the collection system, I think everyone here knows that we believe it to be suboptimal, and I'm being very polite in that description. Um, I'm happy to see it. I hope that this isn't their answer to making people more excited about new cards and them being more accessible. So, anxiously
I don't
waiting on
think it
news for that.
is, because
Okay.
they said that token changes to the token system and the token shop are going to be coming in the next two patches, if I recall correctly.
Two patches. Okay.
So the next one and the one after sound like they're going to have some changes to make the experience better, but we'll have to wait and see for more information on that.
Well, on the subject of changes, since we last spoke, there have been two major changes that have impacted the game. The first is how ladder functions, and the second is the meta in which we're experiencing in that ladder. So there's a lot to talk about here. So we're going to divide this conversation into two distinct kind of topics, although I suspect they'll bleed into each other just because they're so symbiotic. So first is how ladder's been changed. So this isn't exactly the most simplistic of changes. So for those who are a little bit confused by it or are still kind of wrapping their heads around it, we'll take you through the parameters and specifics first, and then we will share our candid thoughts on the ladder itself. So
Let me just read the tweet. So this is from Steven Jarrett, who's one of the Snap devs. So I'm just going to read the tweet. We've seen the excitement and anticipation around us discussing more about our plans to improve ranked modes and the matchmaking experience. We want to share more information about the future. Our first short-term improvement goes live at the start of the new season. We're increasing the amount of bonus cubes earned when reaching a new tier from 10 to 50. However, we are not done making adjustments. Stay tuned for a new blog, including future plans for ranked mode and matchmaking in the next week or two.
So in that blog, oh wait, there was no blog. That was a TBD on the blog. So we don't know what those future changes are. Yeah. But these changes are live.
Yeah.
So you Infinite players reset to what? 70? Was it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, you go back to 70 regardless where you're at. If you're 100 or over, you go back to 70.
And so what'll happen is you go back to 70, so you're at 70 with 0 cubes, and you climb from 70 0 cubes to 79.9, and then when you hit 79.9, you go to 85 0. And then when
Once you hit 80, yeah.
yeah, and then once you hit 89.9, you go to 90, you go to 95. And that's true regardless of where you are on the ladder. So for example, if you started at 60 or 50, if you go from 50 to 60, you go from 59.9 to 65. And the idea was to try and make ladder a little less grindy, because I know some people really like grindy ladders. I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's just my opinion. the Snap ladder prior to this change was the grindiest ladder I've played in any digital card game, be it Hearthstone, Magic Arena, Runeterra even, which I thought was a pretty grindy ladder. So yeah, a pretty big change there. Interestingly enough, though, this month I almost feel like, in a way, the ladder's been even grindier, and I think there's two reasons for that. One is the meta, which we'll kind of keep on ice for a second. The other is I've just been seeing a lot less bots.
Interesting. Well, and I think that we were talking about this offline throughout the past week, and I think that especially for those people who are hitting infinite, it's very analogous to me anyhow of the like 11x in Hearthstone, where day one ladder reset, you're at that high elo rate, you're facing off against other infinite players, and you're gonna be seeing like either Thanos or Shuri decks like over and over, because people aren't going to want to mess with their rank. They're going to want to climb. They're not going to play the meme cards or the, having fun cards because they want to climb. And especially with the Thanos deck, like the mirrors are intense. And like it's just, there's so much, like you have to very carefully consider every play. And it just seems super grindy. And yeah, so you were saying not too many bots at that range. And you guys, like no, day one we were saying like I was goofing around with Nimrod and I was seeing other people goofing around with it, but like I hit 75, so it bumped me back to 40. And like I don't really care. I'll see how high I can get. I'm just trying to beat my score each month, and I get there eventually. But I saw a whole bunch of it, like not a ton. I hit into the early 50s earlier today, and I've seen a handful, and I start seeing less and less the higher I climb. But like up in the like mid 70s where you guys are, like no way. It seems rough.
Yeah, in previous months, you'd see like what would happen is you'd reset to say 70, and then for your first 10 sub levels, like from 70 to 80, there'd be like a lot of bots. Although you saw more bots than I, but anyways, it never really was consistent. But this month, it seems that the 70 to 80 portion of the ladder has been a grind fest. And I actually subscribed to the Untapped data. They released their data for decks and the ranks that people are playing at. And like, if you look at the data sample, like something like, if you look at the infinite range of players, those who reset to 70, like an absurd amount, like 99% hadn't even reached 80 yet, right? So it's this kind of like really difficult thing because people are very conservative. They're retreating a lot. People are not aggressive with snapping because of what Nate said. The matchups are not very clear cut. So it's very easy to think, oh, I'm behind or I'm ahead. And then all of a sudden the match swings on a dime and you're losing 8 cubes, right? So, exactly. So in a way, everyone's having different experiences. For me, it's almost felt worse after a fashion. And I thought about this, and I've kind of bucketed the players into 3 categories, and I'm sure this is a vast oversimplification, but this is just how I perceive of it, right? So you've got the high elo players, right? Those that hit infinite like 500 or 1,000, like the Code Deco guys or
that's insane, right? That's crazy.
So they, a lot of, even when they reset, they're still playing these bots, and so because you can manipulate those matchups, they tended to hit infinite early, and I think that most, if not all, of the folks who are in that bot MMR range are not especially fond of it. So that's kind of that upper tier experience. Then you have the what I'll call the ladder grinders or competitive players, people that hit infinite or high 90s and then kind of stay sub bot MMR range below like 120, 115 post infinite. So like that's where I fall in or Zombies falls into, and our experience has been, not for everyone, but for many, fewer bots, very, very slow climbs, somewhat frustrating. And then you have everyone else, the more casual base that finished sub 70, And again, it's not to say that they're worse players. I don't think rank is indicative of skill, but just they didn't grind to the extent that, they reset at 70. And they're seeing a variety of gameplay. They're seeing Nimrod, like you've been seeing, Nate. You see other things. And what this has done is it's created a very interesting discourse online, people getting into arguments about whether the change is good, bad, or in between, because however, depending on which group you fall into, your experience is going to be very different. And right now, I hate to say it, but even with this change, my experience kind of sucks. And
Yeah.
I mean, if they didn't make this change, I mean, it would be even worse. So I'm not saying it's a bad change, but I'm hoping that whatever it is they're gonna do, I'm hoping it breaks this kind of like log jam that they seem to have created.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious, and I would take my experience any day. Like I'm running into everything. I'm seeing still the Patriot Zoo decks. I'm seeing the Death Wave. I'm seeing people experimenting with Nimrod. I'm seeing, of course, the Shuri and Thanos decks, but I'm seeing like a good handful of like random janky stuff. And I'm sure up at those high ranks, you guys are just not.
Yeah, it's so it's really interesting, and I want to touch on the bot thing a little bit because I've noticed some interesting things this month. So, like Blue mentioned, I'm not in like bot MMR. I try pretty hard not to get there, um, because I think it would make my experience less fun, just as a player and a creator. But the interesting thing about bots is I've noticed something different this season. Previously, like Blue mentioned, when a season reset, one of the reasons bots exist and their function is to kind of inject cubes into the cube economy, so to speak. So there are more cubes out there so people can climb. And the bots at the higher rank usually serve to give you a way to kind of boost you to where your unknown MMR number thinks you're supposed to be. They help you get there a bit quicker. So previously, the last 2 or 3 seasons, what would happen is we'd get a reset, and wherever my MMR is, it resulted in me getting a lot of bots from rank 70 to rank 80. But after rank 80, bots didn't usually appear very much. Maybe one in, a blue moon or something, but it was very, very rare for me to get bots in the 80 to 100 portion of my climb. This month, it's felt very different. I noticed from 70 to 80, I didn't get nearly as many bots as there were before, like significantly less. But what I did notice is that from 80 to 100, there were still bots showing up occasionally, especially if I went on like a pretty bad loss streak. So that seemed very strange to me. I feel like they lessened the amount of bots in that initial 10 ranks and they spread it out over the whole 70 to 100. And I think that's part of what is getting everyone clogged up in the 70s. That and the combination of due to the meta, it's a lot harder to more confidently snap and get those 2, 4, 8 cube games. So a lot of your climb is, a cube or 2 cubes at a time, and the game goes a lot slower when that's the case. It's not always clear when you're supposed to snap or retreat because so much can happen that is hard to predict due to things like the RNG nature of Lockjaw and whatnot.
Oh, you said the magic word.
Yeah. But it's just been very interesting because I certainly would not be infinite right now if it weren't for this boost of, an extra 5 ranks every time you hit a 10 rank milestone. And I wouldn't have even attempted the climb until the balance changes if this new bonus wasn't in place. So if you're feeling it, it's pretty rough on the ladder right now. No, you're not the only one that is feeling that, and don't get discouraged by the fact that you see all these people posting, "Oh, I made it to infinite" and whatnot. The vast majority of the player base, from at least the data we were able to look at, is really kind of stuck in that 70 to 80 range, and that seems to be how it's been going for most of the
Not
early
even
season.
80, 70 range.
Yeah, 70, 79.
I'm sure it's split a bit, but I mean, kind of real logjam. Sir Julian the Tall in chat also made a good point that bears mentioning as well, that when you do encounter a bot, the bot is more likely to retreat now than once upon a time. Gone are the days where
Yeah.
like a bot is just a guaranteed 8. Sometimes they'll only give you 2, right? So they're stingier. They're stingier in appearing, and then when they do appear, they're stingier into how many cubes are being donated. So it's tough, and I wonder if you were seeing more bots in the 80s because I don't know. I was gonna say because there are fewer players there, but that doesn't matter because I mean I've been queuing into Infinite Gamers today in the 70s, so that they don't discriminate. So who knows what the reasoning is? It's so the whole ladder system is a bit of an enigma, and while the only change that they announced was the 50 cubes donated instead of 10 per rank floor, it does feel like things have changed. And yes, I think the meta is part of that, but I I feel, and I base this on nothing more than my own perception, so I could be flat wrong, that there were more changes than just the 50 cube
Yeah,
jump.
something went on there with the bots, it seems like, because I've talked with other people. It doesn't seem like much has changed with the bots for the players who were in high tier bot MMR, but for players who were below that, it feels like something is different with the bots because it felt the same felt the same for a while, and now it feels kind of different. And if you don't know how to spot a bot in Snap, there are a few ways you can do it. Usually they have very basic names and avatars, though I have seen a few people kind of cosplaying as a bot to try and get people to snap.
That is the most cursed like meta thing, like people
Yeah.
trying to pretend to be bots to like prey on anyways.
Yeah. So the way you can tell usually, I believe bots cannot emote. But the bigger way is bots will usually be playing. They play some weird cards that don't seem very typical. Sometimes they make very questionable decisions. But the one surefire way you can tell is via splits. So if you see a gold card or an inked card, click on that card. If there's no secondary effect, that basically guarantees you're playing a bot. Now, there was a very small window in beta where it was possible to get a gold card without a secondary effect, but that's got to be like less than 0.1% of people who have those. So if you see a inked card or a gold card and it doesn't have a secondary sparkle or one of the other secondary effects, that is your surefire way of knowing, hey, I'm playing against a bot. Maybe I should snap and try and get some free cubes.
Another way, and this is going, your mileage will vary with this one, but right now I think it's fairly relevant. Look at the cards that are being played. I was playing a game the other day, and Zombies was watching, and the player slammed a warpath down, and it was just unbelievable that a real live human in that meat grinder bracket would be playing ongoing destroyer. And sure enough, we assumed it was a bot, and then later on in the game, we saw the impossible variant that confirmed it. So if you see people playing ongoing destroyer or cards like Electra's a real common giveaway of a bot.
Yep.
Or move cards. Look, people sometimes will play that sort of thing, but it should get your spidey sense up, no pun intended, to look for the other things that we talked about that might give it away that's a bot. Because here's the thing, guys, the ladder system gives very little away for free. 50 cubes is kind of the first concession that's been made. The bots are a great way to climb. And if you're more adept at spotting them, it's not going to guarantee any outcome, but it will help.
Yeah, they make some questionable plays. I mean, last month we were doing some co-op, and it was like, what? And if it's a human, I'm sorry, you're bad. But like, the bots do some weird things and play some weird cards, and you kind of know, or you think you know.
Yeah, it's like watching an Agatha gamer, right? Like their plays, you're just like, why? This doesn't make sense.
You still have to be careful though. Like, there's nothing worse than like thinking it's a bot, snapping, and then like losing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, like you didn't draw into what you needed to or whatever it is, and it's like, oh man.
Now, kind of to pivot away, going back to why ladder feels worse, and I think this is going to be an unpopular one, but this is kind of segues into the other news item we have about the change to feature and hot locations. So basically, so I'll just go through the item and then I'll give my hot take or my lukewarm take. So, when the game launched, we got a new location every week that was featured for 2 days at a 40% appearance rate. And then on Saturday to Sunday, at least in North America, on the weekend, for one day, we get the hot location, which would be an old favorite that would appear at a 60% rate for 24 hours. People hate those featured and hot locations, the hot locations especially, because it would have a warping effect on the meta. Now, this is interesting because maybe having a warping effect on the meta is something that we want so that we kind of break the logjam of these stale metas, but I digress. What I found in past seasons, particularly not last season, but January. January was the Zabu meat grinder. I did most of my climbing during the featured and hot locations because it allowed me to adapt to the situation and play into it and use that as an advantage, whereas others would be stubborn or they struggled through it. And I found that midweek and weekends, I did most of my climbing in January. And now that those are gone, right? We're in a 2-deck meta. We're going to get into this. It keeps things a little bit more static. Anyway, so what they've done now is both feature and hot locations are going to run only for 24 hours. And they both have a 50% chance of appearing. So feature went up by +10, hot went down by 10, and they're going to be reducing the new locations per season. And they're going to start reusing old locations in the featured slot, like they did this week with Nidavellir. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know why I have such a hard time pronouncing that. So like that one. So I wonder also, kind of just taking that piece, going back to the latter conversation, have it's one of those things. Be careful what you wish for; it might come true. We all hated featured and hot locations, but did we?
There's pros and cons, I think, especially. I'll give you my perspective as a kind of mid-tier collection player. I think that one of the advantages of the hot locations is that you can build around. Hey, I've got 48 hours. I've got this location. Let me build the deck that plays into it, which I think there's a huge benefit if you have a more complete collection. Whereas if you're missing key cards, then you just get dumped on, right? It's like
Death and Galactus, right? Like those were the big ones I think for January. Like 3 out of the 4 locations were like Death and Galactus Central, and if you didn't have those cards, you probably were having a much worse time.
It depends on what the location is too. And I noticed that some of the locations, there have been some subtle changes. For a long time, I was playing like on reveal decks and stuff with like either like the Patriot Zoo style decks or stuff with Doctor Doom, and the locations that said like you couldn't add cards to these, like you could still cheat cards into them with Squirrel Girl or Doom or whatever, and like some of it you just can't anymore. Like if it says no cards can be added here until turn 6, like you can't. It doesn't matter if you play your Doctor Doom early. Like, and I was like, oh, I learned that one the hard way. It's been interesting. So.
Yeah. And there's a good point in chat here. One of the busiest days of the week for playing, for some people, the weekend, it would be like a random guess if you had a playable deck or not. And I think that's just like a problem with them picking a bad day for the hot location. I think picking like Saturday night into Sunday, like peak middle of the weekend, is like, I think it's just a bad time to do that. I think another day would serve them better if it's just like reset on Friday or reset on Sunday. I think they kind of picked the worst day for that one. So I think there's like a double-edged sword here to this change. I like that they're both 24 hours. I think cutting down the new one from 2 days to 1 day is good, because I think for most of them, people were getting pretty sick of it after the first day. I always thought there was like a casual argument, like, well, what if someone doesn't play the first day and they still want to experience it? But I like this change a lot. I also like balancing out to 50%. It was always kind of weird to me they were different, because that 40%, it's only 20% difference, but you felt that difference really hard.
Yeah.
Because it could suck. You build your deck around this location, then you just don't see it, and then you get punished for it. So I like those changes. I'm not as big on them doing less new locations a season. I think that actually kind of sucks. I liked that this is generally, I think, what most people's feedback has been about that part of the news is like kind of sucks to go from it looks like it's going from 4 to 3. At least that's the case this season. So instead of 4 new locations, there are only 3, and they reused one of them. I don't know if they feel like they have to pad it out a bit more, but I really liked that there were 4 locations. I think the bigger issue we had with these locations is they released a lot of overly restrictive ones, and there weren't as many ones that were. What's a good example is the recent one where it just adds a random 3 drop to your hand. Give us some more stuff like that that doesn't severely impact the game. Or the one where if you fill up the location, you get a copy of your starting hand. Like those were neat because I think it's fine to have ones that are impactful and change the meta for a day or whatever. But like, I don't think you want all those. Like, I don't think you want that every week. Like, I
Yeah.
think they just did too many restrictive locations all at once. Like, you'd get not Death's Domain, the Altar of Death. You'd get Plunder Castle, Blutrane's favorite.
I
You,
love Plunder Castle.
uh, but like you get those ones, and I think the game already has a lot of restrictive locations, so adding even more without more of these, minimally impactful ones, I think was kind of frustrating. So I think it's a shame that we're getting less locations that are new because I really enjoy the new locations, especially more than hot locations. Hot locations, I don't mind that they take a weekend off. I'm glad they gave us notice this time because I
Right.
was super annoyed last time. They basically sprung on us at release like it was supposed to be a Shuri's Lab hot location, and then the night it was coming out, it was like, just kidding, no hot location. And it's like, oh well, I already spent like an hour putting together decks and a video for this hot
Oof.
location, and that was kind of useless. So, but they did get better. Like they gave us notice about the fact that at least a bit more notice that Nita Valir was going to be this week's one, and we're taking this weekend off of hot location. So I think it's probably good for the player base. I think taking the weekends off sometimes of a hot location's fine. I think it's a little sad though that we're not getting 4 new ones a month anymore.
Yeah, I don't dislike the changes. I just wonder how much it's impacting that kind of static feeling on ladder. And a point that was raised that I never considered was the uh, lubricating effects of these old hot location system. It probably came at the expense of a portion of the player base, and that's not okay either. And that kind of calls into question some of the problems around the collection system. That said, they did say that there are going to be significant changes, more changes to ladder that are going to be announced, and so I think we're all waiting in anticipation for that. The other announcement is that we have balance updates in the works.
Mm-hmm.
Exciting. We ran
Very.
into some issues with our ability to OTA or over the air them in the past few weeks. So what that is, it's software development speak for a clientless update.
We're talking
Essentially
like
being
server side updates where they're able
Yeah,
to
like a
push
hot
out
fix.
without
Yeah.
having to download a new app
Like-
version. Yeah.
like what they did with Zabu and Silver Surfer. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, anyways, this happens every meta. Some folks love it and some hate it. We have to find the right cadence to drop balance updates that isn't too frequent for most players, but keeps the more engaged players on their toes. I mean, so I think the problem here, if I'm going to be honest, is that for whatever reason, it seems that there's a pretty big lag on their data. And I don't know if that's how they warehouse it or if perhaps maybe it takes time for things to trickle down and hit a critical mass where it's meaningful or significant. I'm sure there's a confluence of factors. But like the biggest thing that kind of underscores this is that Thanos was really starting to take off. Like, so if you think about Thanos' rise as an exponential curve, right? It was like on a steady like trajectory up, 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 up. And then right at the inflection point where it just skyrocketed, that's when they chose to buff it. And it kind of just underscores that if they knew now, if they had the data that we suspected at the time, maybe they wouldn't have buffed it, or maybe they would have. Who knows? I will speculate, but it does feel like there's a bit of a lag time on that. Um,
They
and
even
and
said that too, right? Like they said these when we locked in these changes, like it felt pretty clear that and we're talking about the last balance update on the 21st of February. It felt pretty clear that they were like, yeah. And you know what else made it really clear? The only nerf in that patch was they toned Darkhawk down by one
yeah,
power. And Darkhawk wasn't like that felt like a reaction to them maybe seeing Darkhawk being a bit too strong in the Zabu meta, or maybe even just after the Zabu meta had changed. But like, it just felt very strange because it didn't feel like that was actually a dominant meta force at the time. So it was weird to see that adjusted. And then, like Blue said, Thanos getting a buff when he was like starting to become way more popular and powerful as a deck. Everyone was using him and having success with him in battle mode, and then the build started to get refined. And right as it was starting to like amp up being refined is when we got that buff. So it was really interesting. Like everyone was just like, "Wait, they buffed Thanos? Like what?"
You know what though? I mean, I don't have a problem with. I mean, okay, this is coming from somebody who's had Thanos for like 2 days now, right? I've played a lot of it. I've watched you guys play a ton of it, but my thought on the Thanos deck is like it's very skill testing. The amount of times I actually even play Thanos in the Thanos deck is very slim. And I feel like you really have to pay attention and give it your all. And these like micro decisions make a huge impact. And so like buffing the Thanos, when even if I've got Thanos in hand, a lot of times I don't play it. It doesn't feel that bad to me. I'm used to playing, I mean, some of like the Shuri deck, right, or the Galactus decks. Like there is a surefire game plan every time that is relatively static. Where I think with Thanos, like every little decision: do I play a card? Do I hold it back? Where do I play it? If I play this, what's going to pop out? What's left in my pool? Like it's just so varied from game to game. And so the Thanos buff, like, do I think it increased the play rate of the card? Probably. But I don't know how much of an impact it had.
It's not the root cause, right? Like the Thanos getting an additional 3 power is not why the deck has become so dominant or powerful. Like
that was going to
it,
happen regardless.
yeah, Thanos could have stayed at 8 power, and they did say in the patch notes, "Hey, the reason we're doing this is we want people to have a reason to play Thanos more than just to have the stones in your deck." And in that respect, I think they were kind of successful a bit because, like, having played the deck before and after, like it's only 3 power, but now he's like only slightly smaller than Magneto. Like it can make a difference. He's bigger when you pop out of Lockjaw. And now lore win. He's the biggest default card in the game if you get all the stones assembled because he's 21.
Right. Well, and if you're gonna go down that path, right, of having the big bads in this pool and they're never going to move down, and Thanos is one of them, like you have to make it more powerful than it
has to be desirable, right? Like, yeah.
And they're in a bind because people are buying the cards, and even if they indirectly nerf it, people are going to be upset. So kind of just taking a step back, just talking about the balance update itself, there's really 2 questions that I think everyone has. And I think we can speculate on one, but I think we can pretty well answer the other. So when is this coming? And I think we can answer that. And I think that your deductive reasoning on that zombies was pretty good. So not to try to match your eloquence, when do you think the patch is coming, and why do you think we're pretty confident that's when it's going to arrive?
So pretty much it's going to be when we're getting the patch for the variant rush. Like when we talked about that earlier, mentioned they need a patch for this variant rush to go live. So I'm anticipating that being around or slightly before March 20th when it starts up. So it just makes sense. The way they announced this also, they said later this month. I think if it was going to happen next week, that's not something they would keep to themselves. I mean, it's possible. Because before they announced a date and then they had to delay by a week and then people got upset. So sometimes when it's unsure, it's better not to give a specific. So I understand that. But my guess is if they're already, they probably already have a patch in the works for this variant rush. So it just makes sense given that it's not very far away. That's probably when they're going to do it. Because for anyone who doesn't know, the reason these patches have to be done a bit in advance is because there's for the app stores, for Apple and Android, you have to go through a certification process, which can take a few days to make sure the software is doing everything it should and can't be abused some way on these devices. So there's a little bit of like wait time there. And like Steven mentioned in the post, their technology that allowed them to update Zabu and update Surfer without a patch doesn't seem to be working correctly right now. Otherwise, I think we would almost certainly be getting a change before then. It's just kind of an unfortunate circumstance because by the time this comes around, assuming, let's say it happens the day it launches, the 20th, or the day before, the 19th, that's kind of like 2 weeks into the season. So, like, the season is like half over by the time we're getting a balance update. So the whole like first half of the season has been really dominated by these decks that, were popular like the week before the season started and now are just like kind of very much damaging the experience. And if you've tuned into like almost any of the people streaming the game at a relatively higher rank, there's a lot of frustration right now. And this is from people who are generally very positive on the game. I know Ordinary Harry, you might know him from winning the Creator Clash tournament. He tweeted out something today, kind of apologizing for being in like kind of a bad and negative mood with the game because it's just been very, very frustrating getting, when you can't play your cards because you're getting leech ramped out early. It's a very frustrating experience. I'd go so far as to say it's more frustrating than when Leader was popular. Because ironically, even though Leader was annoying and hard to beat, there were ways to play around it. There really isn't an effective way to play around an early or cheated out leech. And again, these are people who are generally very positive people, and we all enjoy the game a lot. And I think that's where a lot of this frustration comes from. You just kind of want to have fun, and it feels like you can't do that as much right now.
Yeah. We have a meme on the screen right now. This is Ocean Mud's meme. Ocean Mud, his Twitter is full of wonderful memes. I like this one though. It felt pretty apt. Now I don't think anyone thinks that it was the Thanos buff that did this, but like right on the cusp of entering probably one of the worst metas that we've experienced since launch, that kind of just gave us a high five and left. In the defense of the second dinner team, the rate with which Thanos picked up was so fast because there were so many talented people hyper refining the deck, and it went through several iterations before it kind of landed where it did right now. And I had the privilege of seeing a lot of that refinement happen in real time because it was in the public view on KM Best's Discord. It was really fascinating, and I think that really accelerated Thanos because Thanos, to Nate's point, is it's not just a card. It's really 7 cards, right? You've got the 6 stones, and you've got 5 stones, 6 stones. I gotta count them now. And you've got Thanos itself, and so kind of putting that all together was a challenge to refine. The hard thing, the crazy thing about this is that Thanos Lockjaw is probably my favorite snap deck that I've played, and that's all I play. But even I recognize it is a problem, and I think that really just because it's a deck that I like doesn't mean that we should be subjected to only being able to play that or against that plus the other meta tyrants. So it really begs the question then, well, okay, so if Thanos is an oppressive deck, Thanos Lockjaw, and Shuri is an oppressive deck, what are they going to do about it? One clue that was offered in the Discord post that announced the nerfs is that they didn't say specifically that Thanos, the card, and Shuri, the card, was going to be nerfed. They were careful to say that the Thanos deck, the Shuri deck, will have significant changes made to them. So it implies broader changes and more than one. And I thought we'd pivot from talking about how much we hate the 2-deck meta to maybe hypothesizing on what they may do.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. We've talked about it before, but I think that they have to be very careful and very eloquent in their nerfs because this is a system very unlike Hearthstone where there are no refunds, and there's really like it would be really a shame to take one of these cards that somebody has been saving tokens for a month and now it's unplayable, right? You're going to get a lot of outrage and they don't want that, and then they're not giving any refunds or anything. And so the question is, how do I adjust the power level of a deck without nuking the deck to the point of unplayability? Leader is an outlier there because the card is garbage now, but like
you got the other problem. So, okay, if you do that, then you're probably going to have to hit Series 3 cards, which is going to affect the Series 3 gamer adversely. So it's a very fine line they have to walk.
It really, they have to be careful with it. I have a couple of ideas for nerfs. I think that all of our ideas, I'd be curious to roundtable this because I think based on where we fall on the ladder that we may be looking at different things, but probably some of the same. So I'm kind of curious, and I don't know, maybe I'll pick one and then Zombies picks one and Blue picks one or whatever, and we roundtable so we're not all saying the same thing. But like, I have a couple of ideas. So I'll throw one out there. This is the easy one, right? I think that Lockjaw gets hit. What it gets hit to, I don't know, but I feel like it's definitely one of the feel bad cards where the random factor is so high that I drop this card. If I've played my Quinjet and I can play Lockjaw and 3/0 cost stones and pull out some big chonkers, and then I can move one. That like, whoa, okay. That's the feel bad card. Like, I think as opposed to Thanos, Lockjaw, and we even saw it. Maybe you guys a little bit less, but with some of the discard stuff with MODOK or whatever else, where. Or even with Zabu, there's a bunch of funky combos where you're just cheating out big giant minions off of the random factor that you get through Lockjaw. So I think that card might get hit.
I agree. Lockjaw is a card, like if you think about things in terms of cause and effect or symptom and disease, Lockjaw is at the core of the problem. So if you nerf around Lockjaw, it's only a matter of time before something else makes Lockjaw a problem.
It's the Simpsons meme, right? The bar Simpsons meme, where he's throwing out Barney, and then a little while later he's right back there behind you.
Yeah, exactly. So I agree. I think Lockjaw is likely not going to survive this upcoming balance change.
I think there's a few
right now.
There's a few others though that I think.
What do we think they're going to do to Lockjaw? Because like the devil's in the details here, and I personally think there's only one thing they can do without really fundamentally reworking the card.
Just make them cost 4.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and someone brought up in chat, and this is something I see a lot, is like, well, at the same time you're hitting popular pool 3 only deck, which is like the Thor Lockjaw, and we talked a bit about this with Ridiculous Hat. Card game enthusiast and podcast extraordinaire, and he was like, I really think the Thor Lockjaw deck could actually kind of survive Lockjaw going up 1. Now it won't be quite as explosive as before, but you could play Thor on 3 instead of Lockjaw on 3, and you have a chance to draw your hammer. You play Lockjaw on 4, you can still play the Wasp. I don't think the deck entirely just dies from it going to 4, and I think it's one of those things where it sucks that Thanos is what made this happen, but I think this was always going to happen eventually. And it like Blue said, there's a high chance of it coming back again. We've seen this in other card games with like Barnes and Hearthstone. I think the closest thing in Magic is Tinker.
Mage in Wild Hearthstone. How many times did they like nerf around freaking the wrong card? Or the engine card they left intact. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is just like a smart way.
Nimrod for Quest Mage.
Yeah,
although I'm sure it's his fault too, so I'll blame him anyways.
But yeah, I think we're kind of in agreement about this one, where I think, and I do think if this went to 4, the Thanos Lockjaw deck would still exist. It just wouldn't be. Well, that's also something they could hit, and we'll probably talk about that in a minute. But I do think it could still exist at 4, but it would slow down the absolute like breakneck pace. Yeah. There was a great tweet by Safety Blade, and his issue with the current format is something I really relate to. My issue, it's pure random chaos, and you're paying 1 energy for multiple 6 drops and game-ending effects. It's not Snap. And that's really what it feels like to me. And, he said there are different things you could do, hitting Leech, hitting Lockjaw, maybe even the Stones or the Quinjet interaction, but ultimately that's what it's kind of feeling like. Like, anytime, mana cheat's always dangerous. We saw it with Zabu, and this is just like more ridiculous mana cheat. And there's a crazy RNG element too, so you can't even reliably predict these things because it's just left up to the RNG gods.
I'm trying to behave and not just press the laugh over and over and over, but I'm so tempted. I do think we've talked about this in terms of Hearthstone before, but I think it applies here as well, where adjusting a card can be very difficult. And if there's options to fundamentally change how the card works, because I see comments like, I think it's an eloquent solution in chat that we say, hey, this can only affect, like this effect can only happen to 1 card per turn. Like, yeah, but in terms of programming that's a huge change.
Also templating too.
Versus
like wording it.
It is. And I think that seems trickier than like, I could take this and tick it up 1 energy cost relatively easy. Now, I'm not a programmer, but like I work with programmers, and I think that like adjusting the mana level or whatever you want to call it, energy up a notch, would be significantly easier for them to push out in a patch versus reworking fundamentally how the card works.
100.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't develop software anymore, but that's what my education was for. You're 100% correct. One is a configuration change, changing the value of an energy cost or power. The other is redevelopment of how the card functions and interacts with locations, other cards, etc. So yeah, one is easy enough to do. The other's quite a bit more complex.
We
but
saw
also,
that with Leader, right? Like they did
Yeah,
the
they did it with
temporary
Leader.
little minus thing because they were like, we need more time to rework this card, because not only is it the software implementation, you also have the whole design element, right? Like they have to figure out what we want to change it to.
exactly. And oftentimes that's even harder than implementing the change, like understanding the requirements and agreeing on what the objective of the change should be. So I think Lockjaw, Lockjaw would be very hard to rework. It's such an iconic part of the game, and I don't think that we'd want it to change. I just think that it's as the power levels increased and a lot more better cheap cards have been produced, it's gotten a little out of hand, right? So
Well,
I think this one goes to 4.
One other note I'll say about Lockjaw before we move on to other guesses is that I think, so with, you take a card like Cosmo or whatever, and you can shut some things down, or Enchantress or any of these tech cards, right? But it's very difficult with Lockjaw because it's not an ongoing ability, right? So you just can't do anything.
Trigger.
Yeah. So the interaction with it is very tricky. I mean, you almost got to hope that either they low roll or they pull out all their big chonkers and then you can Shang-Chi. But like, you can't interact with the card itself. It's like a Dracula, right? Like you there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
All right. What other cards do you think?
So I think that Leech is going to get hit in some way, shape, or form. What's interesting is that, you said it before, Leech is a card that has a very powerful effect, and so it comes with a high cost and a low energy value. But I think a couple things have made Leech much better. One is the ability to have it pop out of or play into Lockjaw. But frankly, I think the other thing that has made Leech better is that there's a lot more ability to ramp, and the cards that have been printed are a lot more susceptible to being disrupted by Leech. So over time, it went from being almost like a meme to being sometimes correct just to slam it on 5, even though you're getting that huge tempo loss, because the amount of disruption that's being caused is insane. So like one example of many is Galactus, right? When Leech was invented, there was no Galactus. Objectively, if you know your opponent is playing Galactus and you can leech them before they can play Galactus, they lose the game on the spot, effectively. Not always, but let's say 90% plus percent of the time.
Well, and not just like it nukes Galactus and Null and Death.
Yeah,
and
there's just a lot more targets. So I don't actually have any idea what they're going to do to Leech. I've seen a lot of suggestions. Some suggestions have been it only does it for a turn. I don't think that makes it feel much better. Some people were saying, well, make it like Nakia. It only affects the left and the left two most cards in hand. I also think that would in a way make it even more frustrating because of the word that will not be spoken, RNG. Now I'm afraid to say it. I'm kidding, but I don't know what they're gonna do. But I think that it is such a fundamental feels bad and play pattern experience that I think
is it
it's gonna be hit somewhere.
is it unplayable at 6?
I think so.
Or
Yes.
if they take what if they keep it at 5 and make it like a 1 or a 0 or something?
It's not the tempo, right? That'd be like the people who suggested like Shuri going to like 0 power. It's like, well, that doesn't fix like the most busted thing in the deck, which is 30 power
Right.
Red Skull, right? It's like when they hit leader by 1 power and people were like, what the heck is this? So I think it really is like the whole tempo loss thing. You're supposed to lose tempo for Leech by being able to cheat him out. You're not losing that tempo or pulling him out for free or throwing him in, getting a big thing out. It just mitigates what is supposed to be the downside of the card. And it's just frustrating because there's not a reasonable way to play around this card. And I think if you could play around Leech effectively, Thanos actually wouldn't be as much of an issue as it is, because I think one of the natural praise to the Thanos deck are these more control style decks. That's what I used to hit Infinite this month, facing against a lot of Thanos. And I said it in the Infinite tweet, well, you know what you do against Thanos? You just dodge their leech. Because if they leech you, you're probably going to lose. But if you dodge it, you actually have a pretty reasonable chance at winning the game. It's a problem because a lot of these control decks are trying to swing the game with their tech cards on the final turn or later in the game on turn 5 or turn 6. And when your Killmonger, your Shang-Chi, your Enchantress, what have you, just gets shut off, it's like, well, guess I lose. And there's not a meaningful way there's no meaningful counterplay there. It's like there's no, and the other argument you could say, well, what if instead of a reactive deck you just play a more proactive deck? No proactive deck in the game can output as much power as Thanos can via its mana cheating. It's because like they're cheating out 5 and 6 drops pretty constantly, and nothing else can do that for good reason. So it's like the two things that should be able to keep a strategy like this in check, neither of them are able to do it because the Lockjaw mana cheat and the fact that Leech is coming out before he should, or not with a tempo loss.
I will say the one that I did very successful last month playing Sandman Ramp, and it was wonderful to play Electro on 3, Sandman on 4, and it shut down the Thanos decks, right? Because it doesn't matter if all your stones cost 0, you can only play 1 card, and that felt pretty strong against it. It wasn't like unbeatable. You still get leeched and cool. Now my Doctor Doom does nothing.
Yeah,
and
every
that's
deck,
a bummer.
It's all the effects. Like you said, the effects the cards we've gotten, we aren't getting these like vanilla cards anymore. Like, because frankly, vanilla cards aren't as interesting, right? So like we get all these cards with interesting text, and then the text is removed from the card, and it's like, oh great, like it's people like playing their cards.
And like the Shuri deck laughs too, though, right? Because like,
yeah,
if we play this, that's what my concern would be too. Is if we kill Leech too hard, like, okay, now you hit the Thanos deck, but what are you doing to the Shuri deck? Because like I've been playing Thanos the last few days, and like, cool, I'll play Leech, and then they still play a 30 attack Red Skull. Like,
one of the reasons why the Shuri deck is still probably the other meta tyrant is because while Leech does shut down cards like She-Hulk and Taskmaster, it doesn't completely shut it down, right? They could still do the Red Skull thing, which is ridiculous. So I think that other decks coming into the meta that would more naturally prey on Shuri, like a reactive Sarah control deck and other things that I'm not thinking of, that are completely bullied out of the meta by cards like Leech, would help kind of maybe restore some of that balance. But again, this is kind of going back to what we were saying about Lockjaw. All of these changes create this kind of cascading effect that needs to be accounted for. I still think they're going to hit Leech. I still think they're going to hit Lockjaw. But, does Leech need a big hit because they're going to hit Lockjaw? And part of the problem was it popping out of it. I don't know. I just think it's such a, like you said, Zombies, people play card games to play cards. Leech prevents you from playing cards. It feels bad. It's the same reason before, Nate, we were saying about the locations. Why do they keep making locations that play cards? You see the tweets, the memes where it's like, the queue into like a game and they get like Sanctum Sanctorum, Plunder Castle, and like, Vortimir, and it's like nobody plays any cards. Good game. That just feels bad. So, Leech gonna get hit. I have no idea what they're gonna do. That I am not envious of the person who's been assigned to fix Leech.
Before we talk about, I see you pulled up Arrow here. Before we move on from the Thanos deck, there's one more thing we should talk about, which is Quinjet, because that's the often suggested change. Now, I don't think it could be a solo change, and I'm not sure if this is the route they're going to go. But one of the reasons why this deck is very powerful is because the stones are really nuts cards just for one cost. And then our good old friend Mana Cheat, making them free is kind of insane, and especially with Lockjaw, because that means you can start getting big things out of your deck on turn 3. So a lot of people have suggested the change of, all right, change the Quinjet interaction so the Thanos stones aren't considered not starting in your deck, so they don't get reduced, which I think is much more elegant than being like, your Quinjet thing can't reduce below 1. Like, some people have suggested that. I hate that idea because I think it punishes Quinjet, which is an otherwise like fair and interesting card. I don't think this would be necessarily a bad change, but I've played a bunch of the Thanos Zoo version, and the stones, while they're still very good when reduced, it feels a lot less ridiculous when you're not throwing them into Lockjaw and getting giant stuff out of it and cycling through your deck. Now, does that mean they might not change it? I mean, they definitely could make this change, but I think a big point here is that some people are saying this is the only change that needs to be made to fix that deck, and I super disagree with that. Like, maybe it's part of the puzzle to fix it, but like, if this was the only thing they changed, I still think the Lockjaw deck would be super dominant, because think about all the times they don't have Quinjet and they still absolutely destroy you.
So this is going to be a hot take. It's not that I don't think they should change the Quinjet Stones interaction, because anytime you introduce mana cheat or energy cheat to things costing free, it's spooky. I don't think they're going to change that interaction, because I think that people love playing lots of cards for free, and we've seen this before in our other card game near and dear to our heart, where like people are always advocating for cheat to be not less than 1, and the designers are always very reluctant to go there. I suspect, again, I could be wrong, I suspect that the Stone Quinjet interaction will survive, and that they're going to target the above 2 cards, Lockjaw and Leech, before they go to Quinjet. I could be dead wrong, but like, I think that for the reason that you said, that how many games have you blown people out with Lockjaw and Curve, even though you have Quinjet out, still really high. I think that we're going to see that interaction stay. That's my prediction. Even if we all think it's the wrong thing to happen, we want to see that change. I'm kind of neutral on it. I think there's good points for and against. I just don't think they're going to go there. That's just my...
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, I'm biased because I like Thanos Zoo, and I think it's less unfair in Thanos Zoo. It's on. I think it's on the table, but I do think it's less likely than people think.
The thing is, without Thanos, like, Quinjet sees no play, right? Or very little.
Just in Dino, basically. Dino and I guess the bounce decks too sometimes. Because
because they wouldn't make Quinjet not less than 1. They would
that would destroy the card. The card
they would change the stones.
Nuked from orbit. So if they do make a Quinjet change, it would just be the Thanos stones don't count for it.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
It's kind of a tough one, but we'll see. I'm very interested to see what they're going to do. I mean, we could be dead wrong, but I feel like this, like the Quinjet piece, they're going to be stubborn about it. And I bet that something else breaks the game with Quinjet in the future, and then, everyone will be howling, "Oh, why didn't you change it last time?" Where have we seen that story play out before? Sorcerer's Apprentice, anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did that take? What, like
years?
6 years?
It took years.
6 years.
People were crying about it for years. And sometimes it was valid and sometimes it was over the top. But like, Quinjet is the Sorcerer's Apprentice of Marvel Snap. There, I said it. It can't be taken back.
It's not as I don't know that it's as prevalent though, right? I mean, if I'm looking like
Not yet.
the big bad,
Yeah. We're in
but
the early days.
we are in the
Yeah,
early
not
days,
yet.
and we've said this for years, and we continue to say it. Mana cheat is always like the danger zone, and
Very fickle.
well,
Fine line.
yeah, and it has to be super delicately done because when you can play, your whole hand of zero cost cards, it's like, wow.
Even in Magic, like Leyline of Abundance and Once Upon a Time, like these cards are banned because you play them for free and they just blow out the game, right? Like it's a common theme in all card games, or Poro
Yeah.
Cannon and Ruterra, or anyways.
I did want to
Um,
talk about Arrow a little bit though, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I don't have any real ideas here, but I can see this card potentially getting hit just because everybody screaming about it for a long time.
Yeah.
So Arrow's interesting. So in my prediction of nerfs, if they do anything to Arrow, I think they'll just move her down to her original power, which was 6 at launch. But here's the thing about Arrow. I think that Arrow is a very frustrating card to play for very specific types of decks. Decks that tend to go tall and not go wide. I mean, I've been playing the Thanos deck, and while Arrow can be annoying and you have to play around it, it's not backbreaking like it is with Galactus or Shuri Red Skull, where you're playing like 1 or 2 key cards and juggling them around. Are a big problem. Look, people hate this card, and I played Galactus, and I will not play that deck specifically because of Arrow and the people who play it and then emote you. But I do not think they're going to make any significant mechanical changes to Arrow. That's just completely my guess. I could be dead wrong, but I think they're going to be very reluctant to do that.
It's very interesting. I think you can sort of compare Arrow to cards like Polaris or Magneto. And I almost wonder, not that I want it to happen, because I really don't. I think Arrow is like, it's super frustrating. I've lost to it. I've won to it. I've won using it. But like it's a super impactful card. But sometimes it's what you need against a deck like Shuri or Galactus or whatever. Can you play around it? Like, maybe it's tricky. But it's interesting. Like, I take Magneto, and okay, it pulls 3 and 4 cost cards. Polaris pulls 1 cost. Like, they could
1
do.
and 2.
Oh, is it 1 and 2? Like, they could do
1 or 2. Yeah.
They could do the same with Arrow. Maybe.
But the difference between Arrow and Polaris and Magneto is that Polaris and Magneto are overstated and Arrow's technically understated. Although to your point, I think Arrow could be a 5/5 and probably she'd almost see as much play as she does right now because people are not playing her for the power.
Yeah.
Although
no.
power is kind of relevant
It can
because you're
be.
pulling things into that lane. And if you need to pull and win, Arrow can be a liability. But one thing that a friend of mine, Hearthstone streamer, Concerned Mom, suggested as a major frustration with Arrow, and this is potentially something that we can look at as a mechanical change, is that it strikes him as unusual that Arrow will pull cards that have not been revealed yet. So if you think like Gambit can't destroy face down cards. Magneto can't pull face down cards because we can't qualify if it's a 4 or 3 cost. So a way to potentially nerf Arrow is to basically only pull cards that are face up. Although that would probably makes
It would kill the card.
unplayable.
The
Yeah,
card
it would
would
kill
not
the card.
exist.
Yeah, 'cause
it just couldn't work the way. Like, the reason those other cards work that way is, like, 1, they're overstated, but 2, like, it's a fundamentally different, like, direction with the card. Like, you can't really, if, like, let's say you make a change where Arrow only moves when they've revealed, the card's just gone. Like, it's not.
There are only 2 cards that affect cards that haven't flipped yet. Arrow and Juggernaut, I think, are the 2
Yeah,
that come
those are
to
the.
mind.
So, like, I definitely get why it's a frustrating experience, but here's something that hasn't been brought up yet. And Arrow is a consequence of the fact that the game has moved way more into slamming big things
Big
than
tall
being able,
things.
than being able to go wide. So in beta, Arrow was a 5/6, but like we said, you're not playing her for the power. Why didn't Arrow see a ton of play in beta? The answer to that question, one of the main reasons was go wide zoo-based strategies were way, way better in beta. A
Yeah.
lot of the zoo stuff, a lot of the Sarah control stuff, those decks go really wide and they don't care a lot of the time about arrow. Like I've lost count of the amount of times using my like Mysterio and some other stuff to fill up on the final turn, they arrow and I'm just like, nice arrow. Like it doesn't affect me at all.
Yep,
But
yep.
as the game has developed, and this is why you actually see it not being as effective versus Thanos a lot of the time, because Thanos floods their board. It's one of the few decks that can actually get away with doing that. But Angela got hit. Uh, Bishop, this was before launch, got hit. A lot of these cards that Khazar got hit. A lot of these cards that promoted a powerful board, like a wide board strategy, have gotten nerfed. And at the time, that made sense because those strategies were very overly dominant. But the game has developed a lot since then, and now we've swung in the other direction where the big powerful strategies are just playing the biggest thing, She-Hulk, Death, Null, Dino, etc. Like those are the dominant strategies, Darkhawk. Whereas decks aren't always filling the board because there's a downside to filling your board, right? Like you don't want to close off your lane because then if your opponent knows, all right, they only have 10 power there, I just need to beat them on that, it's a pretty big downside. So the fact that like these very like point slam heavy decks have become the more popular stuff, it's been a huge reason why Arrow has been so popular and powerful because that she exists to kind of counter those decks essentially. And I also think Arrow, lover or hater, is the glue holding a lot of stuff together. Where if they hit Arrow in some way, and let's say they didn't address Shuri properly, it's going to be really, really bad. Because the only reason, like the deck I played, had any chance of beating Shuri was because I was able to arrow their big thing out of the Cosmo lane. Without that, there just wouldn't have been a chance. That's like the one way you can interact with the really big point slam Shuri deck. So it's like, I think there's a domino effect if you significantly change this card, and I'd rather them buff some of the go wide strategies rather than say like, oh, this card's too good. Well, we need to look at the reason why it's being so good, and I think it's in the context of the fact that these go wide decks aren't as good. Like, you know, a great example is it's not as popular anymore, but discard. When my opponent has, you know, they slam their big apocalypse and a bunch of swarms, Arrow kind of sucks because they just fill up their lane with their swarms, and it's like
And
I can't pull them.
if they hit, so what's preventing flood decks, right? Flood decks typically flood on 6. Why
Yeah.
can't we do that anymore? Because everyone's playing Leech. So, you know, if other decks come back, right? If decks
Unnerf
like
Angela.
if Discard comes back, if Sarah Miracle comes back, if
Yeah.
Zoo comes back, which I think is going to happen just with the cards that are being printed, all of a sudden Arrow, nerfed or otherwise, you know, Arrow, I guess what you're really saying is it's a tech card that's super premium right now to the extent that it almost feels auto include, but it may not, depending on how things change. They have to kind of take all these things into account. And
There's
this
one
is
more
why,
change about Arrow I think would be really good. Very subtle thing. Remove the randomness from what she pulls if a lane is full. I think giving people a way to like actually interact with her and how they play cards. So let's say I play 3 cards and they can only pull 2 of them to their Arrow lane. Right now it's random. She just randomly picks 2 and pulls. I think what would be nice to enable some agency is have her pull in the order of cards played. So that way you make sure your thing you don't want moved is that 3rd card you play. I think that would be a very subtle way to make it possible to play around her when you otherwise couldn't. And I think it would be less frustrating for both playing with and against her.
yeah, a very controversial card. But I think your point is well taken that it is a very necessary evil, at least in my view. That will probably diminish with a shifting meta.
Well, and I think we have
Yeah.
to take into account potential like new cards and stuff. Also, when we're thinking about, you know, what gets hit and how does that impact like Kitty Pryde and Negasonic and whatever else is coming out. It'll be interesting. Do you think that there are any other contenders for Nerf hits.
The Shuri deck.
Yeah, the Shuri deck. So we kind of focused on the Thanos deck and then just a general powerful card. The Shuri deck, they said it's going to get hit. And so definitely some cards are going to get hit.
What do we
Now,
think from that?
most people think Shuri's going to get hit. I'm not so certain. The data that I've seen on SnapFan, which is our best source for individual card data, seems to indicate that Sauron and Red Skull are problems. Now, I think that Sauron is the sample size is so small because it's a Series 5 card. People don't have it.
What's a Sauron?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's a Sauron? But I think Red Skull. Red Skull is like
Just gonna leave him that size because that's that's how big he is when he lands on my board every time.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's go back to the lore thing, right? At 21, Thanos edges out being the quote biggest card, right? Multiplying effects get stronger the bigger the value that's being multiplied. 30 power is bonkers, right? Now Red Skull does have a downside. But when that number doubles to 30, that downside becomes a lot less of a downside, which is that it boosts as an ongoing, the attack of the opposing characters by 2. Now keep in mind too that to make matters worse, because decks aren't going wide, that disadvantage is somewhat mitigated by that. But frankly, the fact that it goes to 30, it's mitigated. So I don't know what they do to Red Skull. I've seen different suggestions, including making it +3 attack for opposing characters, reducing the overall power of Red Skull. I don't know what they do, but I think that this is a card that I think likely gets adjusted.
Yeah, and another reason why I think that's going to happen is because Shuri, one, they don't like to change cards that have like a fun lore interaction unless they really have to. Great example, Moon Girl Double Dino. A lot of people since launch are like, oh, Dino's overpowered. Surely they're going to come for Dino. But if they hit being able to get 2 Dinos with Moon Girl, that's like a fun little lore interaction. It's also powerful, but I think they value these things. And if a bunch of people in the past have said, "Oh, just put Shuri to 5." I'd bet the whole house on that. That's never going to happen, or at least not anytime soon, because that effectively would completely murder the card. It also murders the interaction with Black Panther, and I don't think they want to do that. Shuri herself is a fun card. Shuri, I enjoy playing Shuri in a variety of decks where she's not doing things as broken as she is with Red Skull. Like I like the Quake control deck where I get to double up my Captain Marvel and whatnot.
It's the Shuri Red Skull Taskmaster that like, and I can see
it's 30 power. It's just too much.
It's so funny because the like the lore element of it that probably, I mean, half the people playing may not know about, but I love how like Shuri interacts with Black Panther. Like, cool. Okay. Do we like to talk about to talk about Arnim Zola? Like, no, but but it's the same with the Moon Girl Devil Dino that maybe you wouldn't know if you didn't know the lore of the comics or whatever. It's funny because you take, like, if you really want to go down that road, I mean, you can start asking philosophical questions like, why isn't Red Skull in Pool 5? Because he's one of the baddest characters ever in Marvel Comics.
Doctor Doom. Yeah. And
but anyways,
that is not I'm going to veto that topic. What qualifies
save that for another time.
We'll save that for the YouTube comment section.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but in all candor, I think, I don't know what they're going to do, but I suspect this is the card that takes the hit, because exactly what you said, Nate. Red Skull going to 30 lets stupid things happen. Taskmaster gets to be a 30, and usually that comes down with like Titania or Zero. So you can like front like 38, like, so like if you do Red Skull on 5 and Taskmaster and Titania on 6, like you're dropping like 65 power over 2 turns. That is, we talk about point slam, like that's crazy.
Yeah, this is a big part of the reason why go wide strategies can't compete, because you can't compete with 30 power things, and the only way you can is if you like Shang it or you Valkyrie it. But there's this lovely little dog named Cosmo that says no, you can't do that, and there's no way to interact with that outside of Magneto pulling on 6, which by then it's not relevant. So I think Red Skull's going to eat the hit. I think you just shrink his number a bit, and maybe you also shrink how much you're boosting the opponent. So maybe you take him down to 11 or 12, but you only boost by 1. They could also make it less than 5. I think they're going to keep it at 5. I think that's the likely hit. There was one change I saw suggested for Shuri that I do think they could do. I don't think they're going to, but if they didn't want to change Red Skull for whatever reason, I think the biggest reason this is so frustrating is because it's so hard to interact with. And a way they could change that is Shuri only buffing the thing that you play next in that lane. So this way, you can't just slam a Shuri in the right lane and then slam your big dude in the Cosmo lane. Now you could still put it in the armor lane and whatnot to protect it, and I think that's fine because armor's a lot easier to interact with than Cosmo is. I think it's a bit less eloquent, and I don't think it's as likely, but if they wanted to change Shuri without murdering the card and setting it to 5, I think that's the way to do it. You just make it so it has to be, and this also enables other stuff you could do with her where, well, if I want Shuri to buff my big thing on the final turn, I play in another lane after playing her. So I don't think they're going to do this, but if they wanted to adjust Shuri while keeping the effect intact, I think that's an option. But I think Red Skull is going to be taking the hit.
It's tricky
You move her to one
because
attack.
Yeah. Well, that's not going to do anything, but yeah.
it's tricky because of the way priority works, right? So you
Yeah.
play Shuri and then you play a 30 attack Red Skull. It doesn't matter if I play my Shang-Chi because their Zola is going to hit first, right? And then my Shang-Chi does nothing. So it's really tricky. It's really tricky.
Yeah, that's the other reason the deck's kind of frustrating to play around, because while a lot of versions drop the Zola, you can't effectively play around Taskmaster and Zola at the same time. Now, usually you'll know if they're not going to Zola because they'll put it in an armor lane or a Cosmo lane, but it makes it incredibly hard to consistently play around this when you have to be like, well, I can try and play around Zola and then I lose to Taskmaster, or I try and play around Taskmaster and then I lose to Zola. I think that you're just kind of like flipping a coin, taking a guess there, and that's never a great feeling. So I really think it's just 30 power is too much. Shuri, despite her being very good, isn't nearly as unfair she sees play in a ton of decks. And in most of those decks, it doesn't feel like she's doing the level of unfair, uninteractable stuff that she's doing in Shuri Zero. So I think that's I think that's why we're going to see Red Skull eat a change, because 30 power is it's absurd, and the downside is very small by comparison.
As for other cards in the deck that get changed, I don't think that Sauron will get changed. I think as Sauron becomes more available, its win rate will come down to earth.
And if Red Skull get changed, like it doesn't matter as much, right? Like,
you can only see play in that deck too.
Well, and like looking at the tier lists on Snap Zone, like even like in Shuri Zero, like they're not playing Sauron anyways in the deck that they've got listed right now, and maybe that's because nobody has it. I don't know.
Well, that's part of the reason it's low population. And F4 All Day makes a good point here too. Sometimes when you try and play around the Red Skull, like I mentioned with like arrowing their thing on 5, sometimes they just go Shuri into pass into 1 cost 20 power She-Hulk and then copy it with Taskmaster. And so that's another situation where it's like
that's brutal.
You're basically taking a 50-50 on, do I believe they're going to play the Red Skull, or do I believe they're going to pass, and especially if they have Sunspot and get a benefit for passing. And it's like, there's not really a great way to make that read. You're just kind of taking a guess. There's not something that is necessarily telling you, like, yeah, maybe if they have a Sunspot, it's more likely they could do that. But you don't know. Like, we don't know. It's the same kind of thing as Zola, where it's like you're taking a 50-50.
So here is a bit of an out there potential nerf. And I don't think this targets this deck specifically, although it would impact it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that She-Hulk is a card that potentially could be changed. It has I don't know how, but they've said that it's something they're watching. And like there's so many shenanigans that you get by skipping turn 5 that involve She-Hulk, right? Mm-hmm. And even so, if you nerf Red Skull, the whole like Shuri on 4, pass on 5, 220s and a bunch of other crap become still a thing. I think this is probably less likely. I think
Yeah.
that they'll probably make the big hit first and then see what happens.
Yeah.
But I think that what would they do to She-Hulk? I mean, they could make her a 9. And that would make her value drop
Oh, I don't know.
considerably.
I think nine's way too much looking at like death and whatnot. I think if they wanted to go that route,
No,
like
no,
they
no, no,
probably
not the energy. I
oh
mean the
nine
power. The
power. Oh,
9
okay,
power. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, they
Yeah,
wouldn't make
slightly
her. I
smaller.
don't think they
Oh, okay.
changed the. I don't think they changed the cost because then if you draw her naturally on 6, she's unplayable. I think that would. No, Death's a very different card because like the discount is not turn by turn. It's cumulative over the whole game. No, I think they could maybe nudge the power down a little bit. I don't think it'll happen, but I do know it's a
Yeah.
card that, again, it's a mana cheat card or an energy cheat card, and it's something that they've said they're keeping an eye on. You can take that for whatever that's worth. But I mean, I think that She-Hulk, ever since it's been released, has been a powerful, high tier, almost ubiquitous card in multiple deck archetypes. You talk about design space, and She-Hulk is always a consideration that needs to be made. So this is like one of those like out there picks. If I had to bet money on it, I'd say probably no, but I think that it's probably like She-Hulk and Arrow are kind of like the out there. Like they might do something maybe very minor if at all.
They don't
But I
feel as like necessary though. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's the mana cheat that's I think more egregious.
I'd agree with that. Like I don't think I think She-Hulk is like very powerful, but also like I found a lot of situations where sometimes like it's more awkward than you would think when you try and like set up a She-Hulk. And also She-Hulk's one of those things where if you're passing on 5, then you're like really susceptible to getting arrowed, which is then when priority ends up mattering. Because sometimes you can do, the good
ah.
old pass into She-Hulk arrow.
This is the domino effect you were talking about. If they hit Arrow, then does She-Hulk become too strong? Like all these things kind of cascade. So I think that their changes are going to be, if they're targeting just those 2 decks, like they said, then Arrow and She-Hulk are generally powerful outside of those decks. I think it's less likely. So, but I just wanted to call it
Yeah.
out because it's something that I've been kind of thinking about and watching.
I hope we get buffs too. Like we don't have to speculate or anything. I just want to say I hope that I was really pleased we saw buffs last patch, even though they were small. I really actually liked their Spider-Woman buff, even though it was like a small thing. I've actually played with the card a few times, and it feels a bit better, and it's out of that
Staple in the Agatha deck now.
Shang-Chi. Yeah, exactly. And so that's one thing. And one of the main like head lead designer person, I'm pretty sure, Glenn, mentioned like people have been asking him about buffs, and I think that's something we really like. That's also a way to help counteract these point slam strategies is buff some of the cards that give us a reason to go wide again, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden Arrow's not as ubiquitous because Arrow has trouble, like the decks Arrow has trouble being good against are too weak compared to the big points that you get out of
I,
Thanos and
I
Shuri
like
and
your
whatnot.
suggestion. You've suggested on multiple occasions that they could look at previous nerfs from before launch in the beta as potential areas to look at buffing cards, right?
Yeah,
Undoing some of those
context
nerfs.
changed a lot. Where back
Yeah.
then those were very powerful, and a lot of the big power stuff wasn't quite as good. Now we have a lot of these big power contenders, so maybe these cards can come back. Like I think it wasn't unreasonable to nerf Angela when they hit her, but the game has changed a lot since then. Same with like Bishop. Like there are just quite a few cards now, not all of them, of course, but I think that's a way where they could keep, because like as many people hate Arrow, like on the other side of the coin a lot of people also love the effect would just be less polarizing if it wasn't so good against the majority of the decks. So I think that really I think that would be a way, and I think you get a lot less angry people when you're buffing cards and they're making more of our collection usable than taking cards away. And they've kind of been, aside from like the leader change, which was an outlier, they've been pretty good about keeping cards alive. And they specifically said when they nerfed like Zabu and Surfer, we don't want to delete cards. That is not our goal or intention. And I was really happy to see that because
So
that
they
is
did
one of the
kind of
things.
delete server, but
Well, at our rank, maybe a little bit, but I think that's also the context of the meta. But I've
yeah,
seen a fair amount of people actually get to Infinite
that's
with
true.
Surfer post change and whatnot. So it's like, and someone asked Glenn recently, like, hey, do you guys like consider reevaluating cards that you previously nerfed, like Angela, like Surfer? And he was basically like, they are not off the table at all if we evaluate all the cards, even ones we've previously nerfed, but the cards they mentioned in specific, like Angela, like Surfer, he said they still are looking like powerful enough and playable enough to where right now they don't see that as a priority having to change those again. But they're not off the table just because they changed them once doesn't mean they're not going to reevaluate them. But I really value this mindset because one of the things that really pushed me away from constructed Hearthstone was the fact that a lot of cards just get like a card is OP, and I get it. You gotta adjust OP cards because you need the metagame to breathe and develop. But a lot of times they take an OP card and make it unplayable, and
Yep.
that's a bad experience, and that really pushed me away because and I don't want that with Snap. I want most of the cards to still be, I want more of my collection to be usable because we have what, like 150 200 cards, something like that.
Yeah.
Can I
and only
soapbox
a
for
handful. Yeah, go for it.
just for like 30 seconds? Because I was so mad when they did this. Like when in Hearthstone, and I won't spend more than like 1 minute on this, but like the design philosophy that like we're gonna nerf this card because it's seeing too much play. Like, well, why did you make it the free card for the set then? Or like the card that this entire set is themed around, and then make it broken. And then the rationale, like the dev comments were like, this card is seeing
its time in the sun.
It's seeing too much play at all levels of gameplay, and we decided to shake up the meta. I'm like, what? No, the rationale, you guys are playing the card too much, so we're gonna make it bad so you guys don't play it anymore. Like,
they can't do that in Snap. I mean, even if they wanted to, which they shouldn't because it's bad, and I agree with you, Nate, but they really can't do that in Snap because of their horrendous acquisition model that I still dislike. Because I mean, you said it yourself. I'm getting you have Shuri pinned. You just got Thanos. They're gonna hit those two decks, and so you're only getting the opportunity to play with those cards now at the cusp of this change. I mean, how like a lot of people bought Thanos because he's cool. I was one of them. A lot of people recently bought him because he was the meta card, right? And you can't discount those people that had to wait their turn to play it because they're either free to play or they started the game after.
oh my gosh, if I paid like $100 to play Thanos and then he got nuked to unplayability, I would be pissed.
I mean, there are going to be a lot of angry people no matter what. I mean, like, when it comes to Shuri or any of these cards. There is one other card they could potentially touch that I forgot about. I think this is also unlikely, but probably more likely than She-Hulk. And that is the Space Stone for Thanos, the blue stone.
The one that lets you move a card?
The one that lets you move a card out. And so the reason is because, so when you look at Lockjaw, right, you throw in Space Stone and 3 other cheap cards, you pull out a bunch of big stuff, you move Lockjaw to another lane, and then you do it all over again, right? Or you get Thanos pop out, and then you move Thanos into Cosmos Canyon or Sanctum Santorum or whatever. It's a really strong effect. I think it's less likely they touch it. They could change it so that it pulls things in. They could change it so it does like an Iron Fist type of interaction where it bumps the next thing out. I don't know. I think that if they hit Lockjaw and Leech, then Space Stone still is very good, but like maybe not as much. I've seen other people suggest that maybe the stones don't draw anymore or they cost 2. I don't think they're going to do that because that makes Thanos unplayable. To your point, Nate, if they make Thanos unplayable, there's going to be blood in the streets. I think they'd be very reluctant to affect Space Stone. And Zombies, you made this point. I don't know if you made it on this podcast because we've been live for like 3 hours, or a different forum. I think it was a different forum. Space Stone is like cool in go wide Thanos decks, but not to the same value it has with Lockjaw. So if you tamper Lockjaw, then the value of it goes down. Because in a Zoo deck, moving things around is convenient, but it becomes actually probably one of the lesser valuable stones, and soul and mind and reality become probably a lot more of the ones you're digging for, and time.
Yeah.
You're always digging for time.
Like, you could change the move stone, but I do think it becomes a lot less necessary to change it if the Lockjaw stuff becomes
Lockjaw goes
slower
to
and
4.
less
Yeah.
consistent, because that's the big issue, right? You get a bunch of big stuff in one lane, and with the pool 3 Lockjaw deck, well, that's great, but you can only do it in one lane. That's kind of the weakness of it, right? You still have to fight for the other lanes. Well, with the Thanos deck, you get a bunch of big stuff, and then you just move your jaw somewhere else and do it all over again, or you move your big thing if
Yeah.
that's the route you want to go. And it's just, I've seen some suggestions you make the blue stone like an Iron Fist, and while I think that would help with the Thanos deck that we have currently, I don't know if they need to make that change if they make other changes to the deck.
I
So-
wonder if you take the space stones, because the stones draw each other, and I think that's makes a lot of sense, like from a lore perspective, right? The stones want to be together, but
Yeah.
you know, instead of maybe draw a stone, maybe it says draw a card. That
Well,
changes
there's only
things,
one
but
stone that draws the other stones, right? All
Yeah,
the
it's
other
just
ones you
Mind
just draw
Stone.
a card.
oh,
So
is it? Yeah, you just
the
there's
thing
so much
about-
cycle. I guess it's
Yeah.
part of it. It's all
But it's a
goes
big
back to
deck.
Lockjaw though, right? But
Right,
it's very
like-
different playing. What is it? It's an 18 card deck, right? Instead of 12. So
If yeah, 6 more stones, so yeah, 18. So here's the thing, right? Being, not to get too into the big bad stuff, but each one of the Perma Series 5 cards fundamentally break the game or do something you can't normally do in the game. For Thanos, that's drawing cards. You don't draw many cards in Marvel Snap. And that's why I think so many people have fun with Thanos, because people
Yeah.
like drawing cards. It's fun. But you can't really print a lot of those effects in this game with a 12 card deck. Because
Adam
then,
Warlock is in the corner crying right now.
yeah.
that card sucks, and it's kind of crazy because,
It's good in Galactus.
well,
That's
it's
Yeah, it's good in Galactus.
it's a yeah, it's so funny to me how some of these cards land like right on in terms of like the lore, right? What they do, and some of them are so weak, and that's why I loved the buff to Wolverine.
That was
Like,
great.
is playable now. Like, it's not the best or anything, but it's playable, and now I see it pretty regularly in destroy type decks. And then you take a card like Captain America that just is bad. I mean, I understand in the right thing, but or even, you know, Adam Warlock is a pretty iconic character, and the card is just not good. Now I understand it's got a function in Galactus decks, but like for the, you know, 75% of players who don't own Galactus or whatever the percent is, you know, I really don't know, but some of the more difficult to obtain cards, I don't know. I got the other day, what was it, like Lamentus one where it or it was one of those, it like it fills your, it wasn't Lamentus one, it was a different one where it fills your card with random, fill your hand with random
Triskelion.
cards.
Yeah. Yep.
By Scallion.
And then what happened was then the next one opened up and it was Lamentus one. And so I got a randomly generated Galactus.
Oh my God.
And then the decks got nuked and I ended up playing it and winning. It was hilarious. But like, I felt like a god gamer. It was wonderful, but it just doesn't, it's tricky.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that adjusting the draw on Thanos could be something to do, but I don't think that should be their first approach. I think they should make
The elegant solution is it's
see
such
how
an
it goes
easy
first.
fix to take Lockjaw and just bump him up 1 mana and see if that fixes things. And sometimes we've seen it a lot again in Hearthstone, where they'll adjust a card by 1 mana and you think that like, oh, that's not enough, it's not going to do the trick, and then it turns out like, oh, that was enough. And sometimes you don't need to nuke the card to the point of unplayability. You just need to tamper it a little bit. And again, I'm relatively new to the Thanos deck, but often I'm asking myself in the first couple of turns, if I haven't drawn Lockjaw, do I want to sit on the stones or do I want to play them to try to draw more cards? And there's a fine line there, but the deck in its current iteration really performs at such a different level with Lockjaw than it would otherwise, that seems like
he juices the draw of the stones, right? Like
Oh
Darkhawk
my
should be like a
God.
counter, right? Like Thanos is a big deck, so Darkhawk should be good against it. But oftentimes, because of Lockjaw, they are cycling and pulling stuff out of their deck and cycling more. So it actually, I see Thanos decks get down to a smaller deck size than normal decks sometimes when they start with 6 more cards. And the big reason for that is not just because the stones are cycling. it's because of the mana cheat with either Lockjaw or Quinjet, and or both. But I really do think Lockjaw is a big one because not only are you're drawing a card, you're getting the effect, but you're pulling another thing out of the deck, and that could even be a stone. And while it's not as good as your big things, it keeps you cycling. That's why Dino's so good in it, because you always have a big hand because you're always drawing. So I do think that I like the wait and see on adjusting the draw, because it's possible the draw isn't as crazy as it is right now. Because like I've played a lot of not Lockjaw Thanos, and you do not cycle nearly as quickly as you do than in the current iterations of with Lockjaw. Like it feels like a totally different thing. And the when you have a card like these stones, the designers talked about this, where the less numbers that are on a card, the harder it is to change, right? Like She-Hulk is a 6/10. There's a lot they can do there to change that card if they wanted to, for example. The stones, they're 1/1s. They really, like, their options of changing the power or the cost are much less. I mean, yeah, maybe you can change the effect, but like in terms of just raw numbers, there's a lot less numbers for them to work with. Like they brought up Wasp as an example. Let's say Wasp is overpowered. How do you change that card? There's only like what you're gonna make it a 1 cost, or you're gonna make it a 0 power. Like there's just not much to tweak. So I think that's kind of a challenge with balancing the stones.
The funny thing, like Wasp isn't that good on her own, aside from making Patriot decks or whatever. But like, it's another one of those. It's a Lockjaw enabler, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's fine. Like the Thor version of Lockjaw has always been like a solid deck, but it's never been so consistent to where it's this top tier, top meta thing. It's viable. It can compete with a bunch of the other pool 3 decks, and that's great. And I think even if they did bump Lockjaw, I don't think that deck dies. I think it becomes a little bit slower. And it's a shame one deck takes a hit for another deck, but it's also for the future, right? Like this, I joke about. I love Cerebro decks, and there's the Doofenshmirtz meme of, if I had a nickel every time Cerebro 5 got indirectly murdered by a nerf to another card, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it's happened twice. And that was with Angela, and then the change to Angela, Sarah, and Silver Surfer killed 2 different versions of Cerebro 5 that I really loved. And that was never... Yeah, and Mysterio, that's another one. And those nerfs were not targeting that deck because it wasn't a meta deck, but it was kind of collateral damage. And so I think you're always like at risk of that kind of happening. And I really do think even though it might be a little bit slower, I don't think it deletes the Thor version of Lockjaw, because you can still go Thor on 3, Lockjaw Wasp on 4, Jane on 5 to draw your hammer, slam the hammer into the Lockjaw on the final turn, maybe some other small things, or like it. I don't think it totally kills the deck. But
the hard
slower.
truth is this: we look at the meta right now. It's a 2-deck meta. And I think what's going to happen is, as the next 10 days progress, it's going to permeate to other segments of the ladder that have been left untouched by this. Wow, that Cerebro variant. I kind of need it now. But I think that if some collateral damage is done to fundamentally make the meta more diverse, then it has to happen. If the deck that I enjoy playing, Thanos Lockjaw, isn't quite good enough anymore so that other people can enjoy the game, I think that's okay too. So I think that we've touched on a lot of cards. Will they all get nerfed? No. It will be interesting when we meet up again in 2 weeks to review how right we were, how close we were, and how far off we were. We can grade ourselves, and I think that'll be a fun exercise. Before we wrap, before we move on to the next thing, are there any final thoughts on nerfs in the meta? I think that I believe I've personally beat the horse to death. But any final thoughts before we move on?
All I want to say very quickly is that I think that the meta, there's a big shift depending on where you are on the ladder, and so the lower finishing players, myself included, I think are seeing a little bit more diversity. I'm still seeing plenty of the top tier meta decks. I mean, you take a look at Marvel Snap Zone and anything, like all their tier lists, like I'm seeing all of them. which is interesting. The most
You'll see that
common,
diversity diminish as time goes on, though.
it's
They had
true.
a tournament today too, and the top 4 decks were all the Thanos Lockjaw deck.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
It was pretty funny. One of their, I think it was Loot Muncher, was like, "Yeah, we had this awesome event. Thanks for everyone for participating. Look below to the thread to see how different the tournament metagame is from ladder." And then it's just like a gif. He's like, "Just kidding. It's exactly the same."
So I'm seeing the Lockjaw Thanos, Shuri Zero, a little bit of the Sarah control, but not a ton. Some of the Electro Sandman ramp. In fact, I played a ton of it and did really well with it last time. A good amount of Galactus, a good amount of Deathwave, a good amount of the discard Dracula, and I think that some of those are just they're more accessible. Still seeing very little Darkhawk, very little Lockjaw Thor, a little bit, but not that much because I don't think it's performing very well.
There's just no reason to play it if you have the Thanos version.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not everyone does, of course, and I do want to say, like, your point, Nate, about like, I knew the nerf was coming because I just got the card. I've seen that so many places, and I like, it's a very reasonable feeling to be like, man, this kind of sucks. Like, people are complaining about this card, and by the time I get it, like, it's gonna get changed, and I think the anger is often misdirected there at like people are angry that they're making changes when what they should be angry about is that the progression is so slow that by the time you get access to the card, changes are being made. It's like we're beta testing the cards before the general population gets them. And that leaves a very weird feeling for a lot of players who don't want to spend all this money on the game where it's like, it's like, think about all the free to play players who they got dunked on by Zabu for a month and they never even got to try it. So it's
Yeah,
like,
our friend Mortal Wombat just pinned Zabu today for the first time.
Oof.
yeah, so I think the anger is a little misdirected there. I think people would have a lot less frustration with them balancing certain cards if they didn't feel kind of like second class citizens because they get them so much later. So I'm hopeful that their changes about acquisition can kind of help help with that.
I feel so privileged to have been able to play Zabu when it was broken. Now that month was pretty brutal. I had a lot of fun, but it was it's such a bummer getting the card after it's already changed and you're like, oh well, this card's not good anymore, so like not excited about it.
I like Zabu better now than before, but the point's
Me
still
too.
well taken that
But yeah, I
is an unlikely situation. The more likely is that they won't have the same impact or excitement.
Leader, oh gosh, leaders, that's
Well, no one ever liked playing leader. Everyone hated leader. Anyone who said they liked leader was just doing it for clicks. I'm looking at you, Binks. I know, Binks, you never liked leader. I'm calling you out. But yeah, no, leader is a good example.
D Money made a song about it. Did you hear that?
yeah, that was
I
great.
did, yeah.
That was very fun. It was
He made a follow up for Leech as well.
Oh, did he? I have not listened to it yet. It's funny.
Yeah, I think leader would be good in this meta. So like the thing is, leader doesn't really actually do good into the lockjaw decks, right? Because unless you have priority, and even if you do have priority, you're just getting what? Their stones. You're not getting the things they pull out. So I don't even think old leader would actually be. I mean, maybe against some of the other stuff, but again, another counter to leader used to be Taskmaster. So funnily enough, I think the two top decks would actually kind of clown on even unnerfed leader, which is kind of terrifying.
It just goes to show you how far we've fallen in such little time. But if you're looking to climb seriously over the next 2 weeks, while there's certainly other options, these are probably going to be the two decks you face the most. Get used to them. If you think that you're on the lower side of the ladder, so this possibly couldn't affect you negatively, you'll see the population of these two decks increase significantly until they get nerfed because they're just such power outliers. And that's where we are right now. A 2-deck polarized meta that's just taken over ladder, and the balance patch can't come fast enough as far as I'm concerned.
I think that it's really unfortunate that their technology isn't working for these over-the-air changes for this, because I have no doubt in my mind they would do something sooner if it was a possibility. And I think we're gonna see. I'm hoping that like this serves as kind of a learning experience in a way where this has sucked a lot of the fun out of a new season. And so hopefully, we can see lessons learned from that. Like we need to not be like quite as behind on like the pulse of where things are going for whatever reason that is, whether that's technical limitations or data stuff or could be any number of reasons. But like I think it's really important for them to kind of be able to see stuff coming a little bit sooner, so that way they know like, hey, we need to make a change around when the season started, because we saw this with we saw they had a backlogged patch for right before the MODOK season, and they knew it wasn't enough. And they were like, look, we locked this in before, but we know these two other cards need to be changed, and they're going to be changed. And they got changed, what, like 2 or 3 days into the season? Imagine for a second that the MODOK season, imagine if we, half of that season, we had to wait half of that season before Zabu and Surfer changes. I don't think people would have been very happy with it.
You
I
know
think it
that-
would have been real bad.
Like one of the biggest Hearthstone memes, right, is like small indie company. But when we talk about Second Dinner, like
It is a small indie company,
it legit is a small indie company. And I think people sometimes, myself included, have unrealistic expectations. Like, this thing is broken and I want it fixed right now. And you're talking about it. They've got stuff like lined up to go, but it takes time. Things have to get into the queue, and sometimes things don't work.
I agree with that entirely.
As a denizen of the internet, it is my right and responsibility to have unrealistic expectations, be negative about things all the time, look for clouds in every silver lining, and get more cynical with each passing day.
Yep.
You have the I complain on the internet title, don't you?
I don't. But I have this matchmaking sucks, so I use that.
That's the
one.
better one anyway. But no, I'm glad you brought that up, Nate. I think it's true that like we have these expectations, right? Because, Ben Brode was like the face of Hearthstone for a long time. Marvel is a hugely popular and successful IP. And it makes a lot of sense that, we have these expectations. But I do think, it's a newer game, it's a smaller company, and I think this first, year or so, we're gonna see a lot of growing pains. Like I played Hearthstone back in 2014, shortly after it launched, and anyone who played back then can remember it went through a lot of growing pains at the start. So I think that's kind of just part of the, they're getting their footing, and it's going to take time for some of this stuff to become more optimized and streamlined. And obviously it feels bad when stuff like this happens, but I don't think it's not happening for like a malicious reason. It's not happening because they're planning it this way. I think there's just a lot of I think there's a lot of growing, and like it's like this gets brought up in software a lot, and I'm sure you're more than familiar with this, Blue, where it's like the people who are buying the software, or the people at the top, they're like, why can't I just throw more money at this problem and make it go away faster? And usually that just isn't really how it works. A lot of people think it would work that way.
That
but
doesn't stop
it
people
doesn't.
from indulging in such notions.
I know.
All right. Well, before we wrap, I have an important show announcement to make. Critical announcement. So, longtime friend of Born to Be Wild, and new friend of Born to Be Cosmo, because we've only been doing this for a couple months. El Tino, his dog Snow came to pay us a visit, and it was remarkable how much Snow resembled Cosmo, save for the spacesuit. Although I think the jacket in the photos a little bit more adorable than the spacesuit. So I have unilaterally declared Snow to be the official mascot of Born to Be Cosmo. Everyone, say hey to Snow.
That's a great choice. Adorable dog.
Yeah.
We need to. I can Photoshop that. I can make it happen.
Oh, I like it. An ambitious Photoshop.
Yeah. I won't even be that hard. We'll do it. We'll do it. I might need a couple more photos, but we'll make it happen.
El Tino took a road trip this past few months ago, and took Snow with him, and they had photos of all the different countries he traveled through with Snow, and I was a big fan. So, anyways, we're all big fans of Snow and El Tino, and now I'm excited to see Nate's Photoshop wizardry with a Cosmo Snow mashup. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, we'll make it happen. El Tino is a great guy. We had him on Born to Be Wild. He has forever impacted our show because we changed our old Murgle to the new Murgle. He surprised us all. We asked him if he had any shout outs before we left the show, and he goes, yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to we just lost it. It was so great.
It's so funny.
It was anyways.
And now is a regular part of the soundboard. But yeah, he's been playing a lot of Snap, big Sarah control enjoyer, grinding ladder, trying to hit infinite like the rest of us. Yeah, happy to have him be part of the community with us.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
Snow as well.
Yeah.
Just want to give a thank you to everyone that stayed with us through this lengthy show. We knew it was going to be a long one because there was so much to talk about. Everyone that tunes in when we go live as always, and those that stuck around from the Zombies, KM Best, and other raids that came in, really appreciate that. Before we wrap, just the usual socials plug. Nate, where can people find you if they wish to interact with you as they should on the internet?
Oh yeah, appreciate it. I'm on Twitter. I haven't been as active the last couple of weeks, but if you want to follow me there, it's at NateWolfeTCG, NateWolfeTCG. I run a Marvel, or excuse me, yeah, a Wild Hearthstone podcast on Friday evenings called Born to Be Wild, which is where our kind of name was born. But anyways, typically Friday nights here on Twitch, and we do have a Discord for the Born to Be Wild. BornToBeWildHS.com is our website, and all the links to all the stuff is there. So if you enjoy that, we are running a Wild Hearthstone tournament series right now. It is free to enter if anyone is interested. We just wrapped up week 1, but it's not too late to join if you want to check that out. All the details are on our website, again, BornToBeWildHS.com. Thanks for having me, though. I really enjoy this, and this is the, for a long time I only played Hearthstone, and now I play Hearthstone and Snap. And Snap is a lot more fun than Hearthstone. Shh, don't tell anyone I said that. But I'm really enjoying it. And part of, I think, the games being so short, and I can play it on mobile, and I just really enjoy it. And being a long time comic book nerd, I really have fun seeing the different variants and seeing the combinations of cards and everything. This is just a wonderful game, and it's brought a lot of people together. So I'm really enjoying hanging out with you guys doing this show. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, we enjoy it as well, and appreciate you, Nate, allowing us, and also thanks to Electric Sheep City and Hydralisk for letting us share the same space, same name, same production value, same formula that's made your other podcasts so enjoyable for all these years. Appreciate the support and camaraderie, and it's nice that we're able to indulge in both projects. Zombies, where can folks interact with you?
So you can find me over on YouTube, ZombiesGoNomNom. Zombies with an S is what I use for YouTube and Twitter. I'm actually pretty active on Twitter, putting out decks, putting out some fun memes. There's a spicy one about the new Wolverine profile picture. That's a little less than PG for the show. So if you want to see something funny, you can head over there. Other than that, I do stream on Twitch over at Zombies with a Z. GoNomNom on Twitch. I took a few days off because the meta was frustrating me, and I don't really like to stream if I'm gonna be in a bad mood. But I had a lot of fun doing it yesterday, and I'll probably do it again after the show. If you guys are still around, do some co-oping or something. And the big thing that I'm excited for is I've been working on this project, a lore video going over the lore in Snap. I really feel what Nate said. I wasn't a super big comic person, but funnily enough, by playing the game, I've been more interested in the comics and whatnot. So it's actually got me reading some of these comics and interested in the lore. And so sometime early or mid next week, putting up a lore video for Arrow that I'm really excited about. It's one of the bigger production value things. I've tried to do something different because I think a lot of people are interested in the lore, and especially some of these characters. Arrow's a great example. How many people, we have 159 people here. I bet you not even 5 of the people here know much about Arrow. Snap was her first introduction, even super people who knew the comics and everything.
She's relatively new considering a lot of the characters that have been around for such a long time. She's relatively new to the space, and even then, it was a pretty limited run. And just to tout, like I've seen the preview of the video, and it's amazing. I just want to give you like
I saw it too. It like
it's
we saw
very
the first
very
minute.
good.
We saw the first minute, and I got into it. That when the minute was up and it was just kind of hard cut, I was like, what? That
it was so
what's happening?
disappointing. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
sad.
yeah. So
It's very
I'm really
engaging,
looking forward
zombies.
to it.
It's
Yeah,
very good. Yeah.
I'm
I'm
glad to hear
excited
it.
for it
And
too.
I can't wait to share it with everybody because I think one of the best things you can do in content creation is find something that, is a bit different. Everyone's doing gameplay, everyone's doing deck guides, and that's great. I like doing that. But I think it's more fun and more beneficial to try and like do something not everyone else is doing. And I think a lot of people really like the lore stuff. And, one of the common questions Ben Brode got a lot. I've watched a bunch of his podcasts he's been guests on, and people always ask him, like, Ben, aren't you worried you're going to run out of Marvel characters to make into cards? And he always, maybe you want to hit the laugh button here. He always laughs at it. He's like, no, like there's so many obscure characters they can use. And Marvel is also making new characters a lot. He's like, that's like the least of our concerns is running out of people to do cards on. And so I can't wait to cover a lot of especially the more recent stuff where most people don't know about it, like, and stuff like Arrow or Null or these characters who haven't been in the MCU. So given that's where a lot of people know the Marvel stuff, I think it'll be neat to be able to share the lore and all that kind of fun stuff with the larger audience.
Oh my gosh. Just going on a super tiny tangent. Brian Michael Bendis is just a phenomenal comic book author, and he took over the New Avengers in, oh gosh, when was it? Kind of mid, what is it, like maybe 2015, 2017-ish. I don't know. Anyways, so it was right after all the Scarlet Witch stuff, and the Avengers had disbanded, and they put him in charge of the Avengers, and he created a comic called The New Avengers, and it was amazing. Such a good comic book. But anyways, it was so funny because he revitalized all of these characters that hadn't been in anyone's mind for 30 plus years, right? I mean, took these characters that were like lost to oblivion and turned them like really cool again. And so you bring up that question about like, oh, you think you'll ever run out of characters? Not a chance. And when you do, they resurrect some obscure character that nobody's ever heard of and make it into a powerhouse card, and they could do that all day. And we just started seeing it with the Marvel movies, the newer movies starting to incorporate some of these brand new characters, Stature and America Chavez, and they could do this all day long, no problem.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that. They've said a bunch of times they want this to be, like a 10+ year game. And looking back to Hearthstone just turned 9.
Yep.
So I think this game does have, I think, a bright future ahead of it, and we're just kind of in that early growing pains section. But I wouldn't put I mean, I do content creation full time. I wouldn't bet all the cards on something I didn't believe in, and I definitely believe in this game in the long term.
As do we all. I never really was into Marvel IP. Still, I enjoy it, but I'm still not, as into it as maybe you are, Nate. But definitely the bones of the game are strong, and I also think that we're going through some growing pains. Finally, you can interact with me on Twitter. I threw it in the chat before, BLUTRANE. Also, be sure to follow the show's account, twitter.com, born to be Cosmo, one word, spelled as you would expect. We do some announcements and some other content we post up there. And as for us, we have the YouTube as well. YouTube, Born to be Cosmo, for those that can't catch us live. Also, we have audio editions that come out on Anchor, Spotify, and iTunes as well, if you prefer to listen to us on the go. So we have those options as well. And we're tackling this twice monthly. So today is the 11th. We will be back on the 25th. Same time, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern. where we'll be talking about all of the events that come up. But I think the thing to really look out for is how well we did with the Nerf predictions. And
Oh,
if
that'll
the-
be fun.
you know, and it's going to be shortly after we believe it will be released, but what impacts we see in the early days of those changes, if it had the liberating effect that we had hoped, or maybe it didn't quite deliver what we wanted. So we'll be reviewing that. That said, for everyone who stuck through the 3 hours we've been on for, really big thanks. It's been a lot of fun, and can't wait to catch you next time on Born to be Cosmo.
Cosmo.